All right. Well, Matt, this is great. Welcome to Jimmy Kimmel's office. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. One sec. Let me switch to my other scene stuff really quick. But okay. Hey, so as far as I can tell, my OBS scenes and stuff are right. So I think what we're gonna have going here is we're gonna have the two separate streams going on, but we're doing the I'm very uncomfortable right now. We're gonna have the two separate streams, the two separate chats, but we can answer questions and stuff from both. So that should be pretty good. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm also excited. Like intro wise, I didn't. I mean, look, this was Matt's awesome idea. I
Yep.
don't even know what's going on. So I'm expecting to just like, we're going to chat, right? We're going to talk about programming. We're going to talk about Twitch streaming, maybe. We're going to talk
Yep,
about
absolutely.
GopherCon. What are we going to talk about?
Yeah, I was thinking actually streaming could be a kind of a good place to start because like I think that we both started roughly around the same time. And I guess just talking about like some of our motivation behind that and like, what we hope to accomplish and whether or not we've done that. I think that could be kind of a cool thing to discuss, right?
That sounds great. That sounds great. Why did you start streaming, Matt?
Yeah, so I guess for me, I realized sometime I want to say it was like April, right? I've been working on open source projects for a number of years anyway, and kind of one of the things that with me is that this I can't get over this scene. It's so funny. Kind of one of the things with me is that like I'm thinking that what I really want is a chance to work on my open source stuff, but also kind of promote it. Like I'm all about that shameless self promotion. So it gives me a chance to not only solve problems that I care about, but gives me motivation to work on things. I can answer questions and teach people, and I think that whole combination of things, as well as just having a lot more time due to the pandemic. Prior like man, I think I had plans like every single weekend for like months, like starting last summer up until pretty much like February, March. It's like I had something going on almost every weekend and then suddenly nothing, right? So I figured this would be kind of a good use of time. I could get started and just start building things and see how it went. And honestly, I'm pretty fortunate. I understand lots of people start and I've already had a bit of a following in the Go community with my open source stuff for a number of years. So, I know some people will start and they will not have very many viewers, and I guess that could be pretty discouraging. But I've pretty consistently had 20 or 30 plus my entire time, which has been great. So it gave me more motivation to keep doing it, which is pretty cool.
That is super great. That is super great. So one thing that I've always wondered, Matt,
Mhm.
about your I guess like Go presence is what kind of like what was the thing that gave you your well-knownedness in the Go community, right? It sort of seems like people know who you are, they know your projects, but what was like the project that kind of like kicked it all off for you?
I guess if there was a single like the project, it would probably be the Netlink sockets or the Ethernet frame sockets, the packet sockets package called MD Layer Raw. I called them raw sockets. It was a bit of a misnomer and still is kind of. But I think it was probably one of those things. But the thing is with me is that I had just been kind of around and kind of self-promoting, like like I did this project, posted on Reddit, I wrote this blog post. Like there's tons of stuff on mdlayer.com now and stuff like that. So that's been pretty. It's been pretty cool. So I think in that case, like I had already had a few folks and I was starting to go to conferences and do the talks and stuff like that. So people kind of already were familiar with some of my work. And then when I started streaming, people were like, oh, heck yeah, it's awesome. I can go see that, you know?
That makes sense. Question from chat. I don't know Matt. Can you intro him first? Yeah. So I guess the quick intro is that Matt, aka MD Layer, is another Go programmer who streams on Twitch. That's how we met, by the way. So this collaboration is really, it's formed out of the beauty of the online Twitch community.
Yep.
Really, from that's like kind of it. I think when I was starting out streaming, I was looking around at all the other folk doing streams on Twitch for programming. And MD Layer was somebody who had a pretty rad stream that I admired. And I guess we like DM'd at one point and got to talking. And then, yeah, I don't know. That's like my intro of what you are. But I guess like, to be honest, like I don't, we haven't really, we don't know each other outside of Twitch. So maybe, where do you work? Where do you live and where do you work?
Yeah, so I work at Fastly. I work at Fastly, and I live in Kalamazoo, Michigan. So if you're doing the hand thing, somewhere around here and stuff like that. But yeah, it's been kind of cool because like Fastly and previously DigitalOcean were both pretty open to like open source and stuff. So it gave me just kind of an opportunity to kind of flip into that, um, which has been really nice. But yeah, I think actually you ended up like messaging me. You said that you'd been streaming for a little bit and you wanted to find more Ghost streamers and stuff. And it's like, oh cool, I'll give you a follow. And at that time, like I think that pretty much just the two of us for a little bit, and then now we've got Matthew Dembski going, we've got Barry Commissioner, we've got some more folks too. Like there are at least 5 or 6 people who do this on a regular basis. So,
Wait, who is Bear Commissioner?
sorry, Barry Commissioner. Yeah,
Oh, right,
he's
right.
Barry Commissioner on Twitch and stuff like that. But yeah, I wanted to ask you too, actually. So, like, since I think you started streaming before I did. Like, what was your start? What was your motivation to do this?
That is a really good question. What was my motivation to start Twitch streaming? I think, to be honest, I actually don't remember what the first thing that started me off on this was. I really don't remember. That's crazy. I guess like I was just sort of like probably a Twitch fan, I
Yep.
guess. And presumably I'd watched a few science and technology streams at some point and got me my inspiration, right? But who would that have been? I don't remember. I need to come up with a better origin story. This is horrible. Like this is obviously like a question that I should have prepared for on this on our little interview here.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like I don't think I ever really watched a whole lot of live coding. Like I think like Filippo would do it once in a while, but I would never regularly watch live coding. But
yeah.
also I found that on Twitch in general, it seems like lots of people are doing things like JavaScript, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
that's still very cool. Don't get me wrong. It's just it's not my particular area of expertise or
Mm-hmm.
things like that. So like when I started watching Twitch August, was it? It's been about a year and a half actually. I've been watching Twitch on a regular basis, and I started watching a lot more gaming streamers. It's funny because Jordan and I actually have a lot of the same gaming streamers, like the Mario community we follow, which is hilarious actually because he's one of the only people who understands some of the memes and stuff like that. But it's been pretty cool, So coming from the gaming over to the science and tech side, like clearly it's a much smaller community, but I feel like we also are a little bit advantaged, right? Because
Yeah.
in the tech community there are many fewer people, and people kind of seek you out. Like random people, they'll find a programming stream and they'll hop in and ask questions. Like you'll get the stuff like, "Hey, can you help me hack my mom's Facebook?" and stuff like that. I've had that more than once.
Yeah, people are always trying to get their
Yeah,
to try to figure out how to hack their mom's Facebook. I don't know why that's
right.
such a popular one. But yeah, I mean, as far as the communities, I agree. I think that there's something pretty nice about having a group of people who are kind of, it's just like small and also full of people who are presumably have the shared interest of something that's like technical, right? That's, I guess, it's maybe similar, I guess, to like the much larger community of people who have shared interests of games. It's
Yeah.
just like, I guess to me it feels like there's more to relate to, right? Since we do this stuff professionally, there's a lot to talk about, there's a lot of questions that one could ask, and it's interesting. I think one thing that I really like about watching other people do live coding stuff is that you can get tips about how people do the work, right? And like, how do you organize your files? Like, what are the things that you're just like these little quotidian things? Like, did you have any weird shortcuts that you use that I didn't know about, or something like that? That's something that I really enjoy about watching other streamers.
Yeah, and something I think is so funny is that when you watch anybody stream, and if you ever start streaming, for the people watching right now who have maybe considered Twitch streaming like coding but have not yet, you need to realize that like nobody's process is perfect, right? And you'll see me, for example, fumble around with like VS Code, like I don't know the keyboard shortcuts, or I'll fumble around with my file editor, or like whatever else, like any of these tools, or I didn't know what was it? Isn't it Alt L in the terminal clears it or something like that, or like Control L? And I did not know that until like very recently, and it's like somebody in Twitch chat taught me that. So the thing is that like even though I am an industry, I guess a little bit of a veteran at this point, like I've been in the industry for about 8 years. Uh, like my day to day work is still like, sometimes kind of sloppy, sometimes kind of whatever, but it's all about like that process. And kind of, I think it's important for us to humanize ourselves and realize that like everybody needs Google to remember some silly algorithm or whatever else. Like that's a totally normal thing, and you shouldn't be ashamed of that, right? Like I think it's pretty cool that like people are willing to, when we go on stream like this, like we're able to show a little bit of like vulnerability and like, show people the process, right? I generally am pretty picky about my code and I want to ship something that's like very complete, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Question from Raphael: what are the demographics, gender, race, economic class in live coding, age distribution? That's a good question. I mean,
I have
to
no
be
idea.
honest, I haven't studied it deeply. I would say that it probably skews kind of white and male, but there's several people of color who I follow on Twitch that I'll call out. There's Jason J. Phillips, who I guess he's called Pull Up and Code or something like that. He used to work with me at my first company. And then I think her name is Taylor Alexander or Taylor something like that. She goes under twitch.tv/cyberbarbie. And she's a great streamer. I think she's kind of earlier in her career, but I think there's like, I would like there to be more diversity. And I think there's definitely some role models out there for people.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think I think, you probably have more info than I do. Like, what I really should do is go find more Twitch streamers like who do coding outside of just the Go community. Like, of course, this is my community. This is what I'm most comfortable with, but I really should expose myself because I find that like a lot of the time when I'm done streaming, for example, there's nobody really on my follow list I can send a raid over to. So I think it's pretty cool. You can just find somebody who's working on some project and just send them a raid. Like it's kind of those good vibes, and that's
Definitely.
something I really should work on.
Somebody's asking Chachi from the chat, how did you get into Go programming?
I think it'd be good for both of us to answer that question, but I think for me, so I originally, let's see here, my first open source project was a media server written in C#, and I was actually building it and running it on Linux because at the time there was the mono C# runtime, stuff like that. So by that point, I'd already developed an interest in network programs, and then I was doing PHP professionally at work, and it was whatever. Like, I mean, I was kind of looking for a new thing, but I hadn't really committed at that point. So I think for me, a friend introduced me to Go, and it took him, I want to say, at least 2 or 3 different tries, and I was just hesitant for some reason. Like, I just figured, like, oh, it's this little language. It's not really, it's kind of cool. It's kind of different. Might not go anywhere. I don't know. And one time I just sat down and I did the Go tour, and I really kind of dug into it, and we decided, like, okay, so if we can do this and we can build these things, like, let's write a BitTorrent tracker in Go. And we did that, and it's actually still on my GitHub, and it's really bad. But the thing is that it was a great learning experience, and I ultimately learned a ton doing that project. It turns out Go is very, very good for building network services, and that's really what I care about. Like, the thing I really do is networking, and that's especially been true the past 4 or 5 years. But I think it's very cool that Go is so well suited for that purpose. And frankly, I was telling somebody earlier, like, the only things I wouldn't really do in Go are like operating systems type stuff, like kernel level stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would be interested in something like Rust or Zig. But for any kind of like user space, like whether it's like systems programming, interacting with Netlink, or HTTP APIs, like I feel like Go's a good fit,
Mm-hmm,
So I'm curious what your origin story is with it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, somehow, so right, I was mentioning this a little bit earlier during the stream, but the very first exposure I had to Go was in college. I was doing this, it was some kind of like computer architecture class, I think is what it was called.
Mm-hmm.
And they had us write a MIPS simulator. So MIPS is some like architecture that I, to be honest, like don't even really remember what it does or what it's about. I think it's kind of like a reduced instruction set kind of operating system, or instruction set rather. And so they wanted us to write a simulator for it, and Go is this programming language that like was sort of up and coming. To be honest, I forget exactly why I'd heard of it at that point, but I sort of wanted to try it out. So I wrote the assignment in that, and then I put it down, and I didn't use Go again until I was hired by Cockroach Labs to work on Cockroach DB. So basically, like, I put it down for like, I don't know, like 7 years, and picked it back up professionally. And yeah, so then I've been basically using it exclusively ever since.
Yeah, totally. It's kind of funny because we come at it from different perspectives, right? Like for me, I started writing Go for side projects, and I was like, I want to work at a company that does Go, and that's how I ended up at DigitalOcean, because at the time they were one of the sponsors of the first GopherCon. So I kind of went down that list and I saw who was hiring and what they were doing, and I was like, oh, building cloud backend in Go. And I remember interviewing there and saying like, oh, you must have a lot of Go deployed already. I'm like, oh yeah, we're working on it. Like at that point, there were maybe 1 or 2 services. Like the majority was still in Perl, but by the time I left DO a couple of years ago, there was a lot of Go.
Yeah,
that was pretty cool.
So let's see. Quick questions from the chat here. Well, this is not a question. Search Netlink and Go. Matt pops up all over the place. Yeah, so
yeah, that's true.
You're famous, yeah. Matt. How frequently do we work out? You could go first.
So I'm aiming for my goal this year is 4 times a week, but I've been doing more recently 5 or 6. But I can't lift weights right now. I had surgery about a month ago, and I'm fine now. I'm good. But one of the conditions is that like they had like cut some muscles in my abdomen and stuff. It's like I can't really strain, and I can't lift more than 10 pounds. But I want to get back to lifting weights really bad because it's really fun, and it definitely helps with like your hands and stuff. Like for me with programming, I wrote a blog about this a couple of years ago, but I used to have a lot of problems with like hand pain, joint pain, and especially my elbow. Like this would like kind of fall asleep, the nerves and everything. Mm-hmm. And I found that weightlifting really helped with that. So I got into it a little bit during college, but I started taking it more seriously the past like 3 or 4 years, and I miss doing that. But since I can't go to the gym right now, I've got a set of weights here, and I do like cardio on like a little bike. But I make it work. So
that's cool. That's like quite a bit more advanced than what I've got going on right now. To be honest, physical fitness since COVID has been like the absolute worst. I don't really do any structured working out, and that was a big problem for me when I discovered like halfway through quarantine that like even going on like a couple of mile walk to the park made me my like legs really sore.
Yeah, right.
So like that's been a pretty sad realization. I don't know. Like I guess before quarantine, I was doing this like spin class thing. I don't know if you've ever done that, but
I've not done it, but I'm familiar. Yeah, that's awesome.
so I was going to this place called Flywheel. I think it was called Flywheel, right? And I got really into that because it's kind of like working out's not really my favorite thing, but I'm a music oriented person, and the music at Flywheel, it's very cheesy, but it also like it like puts you on an emotional arc, right, to working out. And so like for whatever reason that sort of motivated me to do a lot of that stuff. And it was working out until COVID struck or whatever.
Right.
Standing desks, personally, I have only a sitting desk. At work I had a standing desk, but I have no standing desk here. I kind of am sad about it. I think you have one, right, Matt? I see your desk going up and down on your stream.
Yeah, I was actually considering if I wanted to stand today, but I felt like it might be kind of weird with me standing and you sitting. So yeah.
Well, I just would have adjusted the, it sort of looked like this or something like that.
Yeah, a little more chill this way. But yeah, I do have a standing desk and I actually really love it. So I've got an entire like blog of stuff. I can drop a link in both the chats. But
yeah, do it.
I've got a blog with like my whole setup, and it's definitely I built it up over the course of a few years. So I mean, the gear itself like is fairly. Here we go. The gear itself is fairly, I've got a lot of different pieces and stuff, lots of moving pieces, but I built it up over time. And it's like, you don't have to invest in everything at once. But I think that if you're working from home and you want to take it seriously, like a standing desk is one of the best investments you can make. Because for me, like ergonomics really matter. Like ergonomics help me not like hurt myself when I'm working. So
yeah, it's important. We do a lot of typing, right?
Yeah, and it's something you don't really think about. And honestly, I ignored the symptoms for years. Like I would just program and hack like all day. Like I had an internship. I was working full time and I was in my last semester of school. So I would go to work, like, do 6 or 8 hours of programming and then stay after work and work on my senior design project for like another 6 hours. And I was doing like 12-hour days, and it's like, oh, my fingers hurt a little bit. I thought it was just a bad keyboard or something, but it did not occur to me at that point that I was kind of wearing myself out. So you need to be really careful. It's important. On the topic of fitness really quick. So Taryn asks, consider picking up Ring Fit for the Switch. Either of you have experience? I do not. I have a Switch. I do not have Ring Fit.
I also do not have Ring Fit. My friend was considering buying it. I don't even know what it is, really, to be honest.
I don't know what it is either. Yeah, the name is familiar, but I don't know anything else about it.
So. Faust asks, do you guys plan to start your own startups at some point in the future?
It's a funny question because like people have asked me that several times, but I don't think personally I am interested in much outside of the technical space. Like I think I would have a really hard time like starting something from the ground up, like unless I was just focused on the technology aspect. Like I don't really see myself as the kind of person who wants to go speak to investors or that sort of thing. It's just not really my area of interest. Like I find that if I can get paid to work on something I appreciate and then have time to do my open source stuff, that's where I'm really happy. So
yeah, you could be. I mean, I don't think that you have to be the financier, right, to be a startup person, right? You can be more of that CTO role, and maybe you can have a really businessy CEO, and they could do the fundraising, and you can kind of just be the technology director, maybe, right?
Yeah, I don't know. How about you?
I think for me, I think that, like, I don't know. It's like there's appealing things about starting a company, and there's things that are like deeply unappealing about starting a company. I think the things that I feel excited about thinking about starting a company. By the way, to all who's watching, not doing that anytime soon.
Yeah, me either. Don't
worry. Rooted at the at Cockroach Labs right now. But yeah, I would say that the appealing thing is being able to make those key decisions about the culture and structure of a company early on in the ways that you think are good, and having sort of the ability to make changes when you want to. I think without having to get stuck in a cycle of, well, I don't know, disagreements or consensus building. I think also for me, some of the most fun times I've had at companies have been when they're relatively small. And if you start one, I guess you get to be at a company when it's pretty small. That being said, deeply unappealing things, just as kind of what you said, right? Like you have to deal with a lot of other stuff, business things.
Right.
And you also have to be 100% invested like all the time, right? That's going to be your baby for N years. It's not going to be as easy to take vacation. You're going to be more stressed, and you're going to have a lot more on the line. And I think that, I don't know, do I really want to be doing that? It's just not exactly clear to me. Would I be able to Twitch stream as much? Like, probably not. I like Twitch streaming. So those are some things.
Like, it's kind of funny because, like, I can see myself, like, I can see myself doing like the 15 or 20 person company thing again, but probably not the 3-person company,
Yeah. Were you at a 3-person company?
No. So I've actually never been at a company that small before, but I think let's see here. So I think when I joined DigitalOcean, they were like 50, 60. There was a place here in town that was like 30, and then another place in town that was like 120. So I think my smallest is still about 30. But even at DigitalOcean, that early on, like that 50, 60 person phase, that was pretty wild. That definitely kind of taught me like what startup culture really is. And we learned a lot along the way. But it was also my first time working remote, so that was an experience as well.
Somebody was actually asking about remote. Do you prefer to be in the office or remote or mixed? And what was that like joining DigitalOcean, like totally remote?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny for me now because I've been working remote for 6.5 years at this point. Coming up on, when I joined DigitalOcean was the first time I did it, and I had only had maybe a year and a half of professional experience before that working for a company here in town, although I had an internship as well. So I think in general, I really love remote, and I think given the choice, I would do remote almost all the time. But that being said, what I normally tell people is that given the choice, I would go into the office Mondays and or Fridays for things like meetings and socialization, given the choice. But that being said, if I need to get work done, there is no better place than right here. Like, I've got my 3 monitors, I've got my standing desk, all my ergonomic peripherals, music, no distractions. Like, it's perfect, So I'm in Kalamazoo, Michigan. It's not a tech hub. Like, it probably never will be. I probably see myself working remote for the rest of my career, realistically, which is a very strange thing. Like, I'm only 29, so I've got a long ways to go, but I think realistically I could be working remote forever, right? And that's a weird thought.
Yes.
Given the choice, like if I ever worked for a company that was local, like I said, 1 or 2 days a week at most, I think. How about you?
I think just to respond to what you were saying at the end quickly is that anytime that I start thinking about the like forever kind of thoughts, those are always going to be depressing. No matter if you're thinking about like, working remotely forever or like being in Kalamazoo, Michigan or Brooklyn where I live forever. Any kind of forever thought is like bad and should be banished, in my opinion. Like, I always try to banish the forever thoughts because it just is like, I don't know, for me it's like not a helpful mode of thought. But
that's a very good point. I mean, like that's an interesting point, right? I think I tend to I have this problem where I forget to like kind of embrace the moment sometimes or celebrate past successes. Like, I'm always thinking like 5-10 years ahead or beyond, and that can cause me to either not enjoy things as much or like forget like the things I'm accomplishing, right? Like ultimately there was a little bit where I wondered like should I move to San Francisco or New York? Like, should I be willing to do those things? And for a while I was afraid to, right? Like, I grew up here in the Midwest, and like I was never really comfortable with those big cities and stuff, but it's gotten a lot better. And I think now that I have like contacts, I think it could be a lot better. But that being said, like, things have worked out for me pretty well, and I'm pretty happy where I'm at. But yeah, I guess I really shouldn't think about forever, right? Like, I think it's important to, qualify that, like, of course, life circumstances can change, and you never know.
Yeah, I think with regard to remote work, I was thinking recently that, I mean, the mixed stuff, right? Like, I think people are talking about that because people miss the socialization at this point. Is kind of how I feel. I think that, I mean, besides the fact, that COVID's been tough for all sorts of reasons. I think that just in terms of a purely, remote work at a software company world, I think I've been a lot more productive and probably more happy working remotely because you cut out the commute, which I guess for you wasn't really a thing.
It was like a 15-minute drive.
15-minute drive.
Yeah.
That sounds pleasant. You're all by yourself. You get to listen to whatever
it wasn't the
music
worst thing. Yeah.
In New York, I mean, I didn't have the longest commute, talking like 35, 40 minutes in the train. Seems fine, but like it starts to add up on you. I think it starts to grate on you. You gotta wake up a little early. You gotta like jam yourself in there. You gotta be like dressed and like feeling like armor from the world, and I think like over time that sort of starts to wear you down. And so it's been a really nice like relaxation break in a sense, just from the stress of like commuting to the office, which I've really quite enjoyed. That being said, I think for me, so you were talking about meetings, right? You were talking about it would be good to go into the office to have meetings and socialize with people. Yep. I guess like kind of for me, I like having meetings at home actually, because I don't know, like you could just like chat with, there's like no physical necessity for like just having a meeting in a sense. What I really miss is the like whiteboard collaboration.
Yeah,
That's kind of
right.
what I've been really crushed on. It's just that like you can't sit around and pair program with somebody in an easy way, like draw something, use a sticky note, like having that physicality to the work. I feel like is something that I really miss. And hopefully, yeah, like a one day in the office thing. But for me, it would be like that one day in the office should be empty. I don't want to have a meeting. I want to be able to just like free form collaborate with the people that I want to be collaborating with.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that like when it comes to like your one-on-one meetings with your manager and stuff, like those can be remote for sure. But like I think I'm probably thinking more along the lines of what you are, stuff like whiteboarding sessions or design, architecture, that sort of stuff is definitely useful in person for sure. And I'm thankful that my teams at Fastly have done a pretty good job of like getting people together like once or twice a year to do those sorts of things. Like
Yeah,
we'll get together for a week in Portland or wherever and do the whiteboarding and make kind of like future plans, and then we can go home and just execute, and like write code, which is great.
that sounds nice. Yeah, the remote kind of like getaway methodology. I think like we sort of try to do that at Cockroach. We sort of have like a yearly team trip, and we've tried to do like a bi-yearly or like on the other axis or whatever, also a yearly but like 6 months shifted, like everybody comes to the headquarters kind of
Yep.
thing. I think it's been okay. I think yeah, I don't know. So tell me, like when you guys all get together at Fastly, what is the like modality of um collaboration that you use? Like is it there's like fun activities too, and then there's some work, or is it mostly work, or is it mostly fun?
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit of both. I think the last time we got together was so Fastly is like I think Fastly is like 1,000 people now, which actually blew
Oh
my
wow.
mind. I had no idea, but we have also have like a very large like sales, marketing, etc.
Yeah.
organization. So I tend to think in just in terms of engineering, right? But we got together in New York City in November 2019 now,
Hmm.
and that was the last time I got together with everybody.
Yeah,
So
makes
November
sense.
2019, there would have been probably like 200 or 300 of us in New York, and we got together and like that was kind of like an internal conference in a way. Like you basically submitted talks and like did sort of stuff like that and attended presentations. But then at night there were a lot more chances for socialization, like went out and got beers with people, or we did like a boat tour. We did like a boat tour out to the Statue of Liberty, and it was really funny because like we're all hanging out, talking tech, whatever. Like we're
Yeah.
not really there for the touristy stuff.
Right,
Like it's
right,
kind of
right.
cool, but it's just kind of happening around us.
Yeah.
And the guy on the boat on the mic is just going off. He's like, the world famous Brooklyn Bridge, and like blasting music and all this shit. And it's just like, we're just chilling, man. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
it's cool. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm gonna take a picture, but it's like we're just chilling out talking tech,
Yeah.
Like, we don't we're not really here for the sightseeing.
Yeah.
It was pretty funny.
That is funny. Future of remote work will be VR assistants, water coolers, and whiteboards in virtual space. Did you guys ever try one of those? Like the like Gather Town things, or like all of those funny little new tools that are popping up?
Yeah, I know they had like a gather town for GopherCon this year. I actually did not participate because I was just mostly working during that as well. But
Yeah.
I saw the folks at Tailscale mention some kind of tool recently where it's kind of like a virtual office and you walk around and like can hear the conversations
Right.
going on around you and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool too.
I feel like there's been a proliferation of those things. We've tried Gather Town, which was pretty fun.
Yeah.
And then there's one where I think you can like drag, everybody's a little circle avatar, and you drag your little, sorry, but it's a video, right? So your circle avatar is your video, and you can drag your video into a group, I
Yeah,
guess.
that's the one. I think that's the one the Tailscale people were talking about.
Okay.
Yeah. And that seems like kind of a cool thing. I know that, what was it? I think very early on at DigitalOcean, we were demoing some software where you've got a bunch of people on like a grid and your camera updates like every like 5 or 10
yeah.
seconds. So you can see if somebody's at their desk, but that was just kind of weird, like
Yeah.
I don't like being watched all day. I don't want to have my camera on all day. The one
Yeah.
thing we did try that I thought worked pretty well is when my team was very small at DO, we were 4 people and 3 of them were in New York and I was in Michigan. We would have like an all day audio, like what was it? Not Ventrilo, Mumble. We have an all day Mumble channel going. And be like, hey, you guys around? Like, let's talk about this. And like that was actually pretty useful. But honestly, I find that these days like Slack and just your regular Zoom calls are sufficient for my needs.
I tried to like start up a sort of Discord always on voice channel thing early during COVID, and we use that for stand-ups now. Like a bunch of different teams have a little stand-up voice thing, and it's kind of nice because you see the presence, right? You see like the SQL execution team is like standing up in here because you can see their names there, and like the SQL schema team is like standing up over here and you see their names. But I think like I don't know. Besides that, we haven't actually gotten to like it hasn't really worked. Like the always on thing, it just didn't like click with people. I think it's because it's annoying. Like you don't,
Yeah.
you want to feel like you're alone because you're at your house, right? You can't, it's not exactly like you can just say, oh, because I'm at work, I'm going to pretend to be in the office. Like people's brains don't really like work like that. I don't
Absolutely.
think.
And I tend to appreciate my I'm a pretty social person, but I do tend to appreciate my alone time when I'm trying to get things done. Like if I'm actually trying to do code and get things done, like I take it pretty seriously. And I tweeted like a couple weeks ago or something, like I was working on some route netlink stuff for like 3 or 4 hours straight, and I didn't even eat lunch. Like I was like that focused on it. And it's like at that point, like you don't want to talk to people, you know. And
Yeah.
it's not like you have anything against them. It's just more so that I was in the zone and trying to, you know, understand how the kernel fits all this stuff together and like make it work, right? And I needed that time. So having to go into an office and put on noise canceling headphones, like because there's distractions all around you, kind of defeats the point of that, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Getting that isolation. It feels good. Do you soft multitask, or do you have a question from your chat?
Nothing at the moment, no.
Okay.
So.
Do you soft multitask music, podcast, YouTube, other TV while working remotely?
I find that so for the past like, you know, year when I've been watching Twitch, like I find that I tend to put Twitch streamers on like game streamers because it's pretty entertaining and they're engaging with the chat and they're talking and answering questions and just you get to watch some pretty fun gameplay or some pretty silly stuff going on. So I think that's kind of my new default is Twitch these days, but otherwise I would tend to put on music. I would put on an album and then when the album ran out sometimes it would stop playing and I would just not even notice, you know. So yeah, a little bit, but mostly these days it's Twitch. So yeah, I guess I would soft multitask in that way.
Yeah, I think for me, Twitch is too distracting to have if I'm actually trying to get work done. But I like wish that I could soft multitask with Twitch on. That'd be sick. I think the main problem is that like my actual job, like in contrast with what I like to stream on Fridays, my actual job is like quite a bit of meetings. I'm a manager, so I end up talking to people all day, and so you can't really soft multitask while you're talking to people. So I guess my answer to that question is basically no.
Yeah, and I mean I'm an individual contributor, so as a result, like I have you know typically a maximum of like 2 or 3 meetings a day, maybe, and that's just on like Mondays, you know.
Yeah.
So otherwise, I have basically the entire day to myself, and yeah, I've just got Twitch open with some Mario streamer or whatever.
That's the dream. That's definitely one thing that I miss about IC.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
How do you deal with anxiety at work?
That's a good question, right? I mean, I think that let's see. I've been thankful that, you know, my managers at both DigitalOcean and Fastly have all been very understanding and good about that. And also I can, you know, we have either direct team channels so we can say like, hey, like, you know, something that's important. So back to the remote work topic, something that's important for remote workers and or junior people, especially too, like you need to know that it's okay to admit and acknowledge like you're struggling or you need help or you're concerned, like do these things. Like this is important because if you're, you know, if I'm 1,000 miles away from my coworkers and I don't say anything, then how do they know, you know? Or when you're more junior, like you think that like I need to make a great impression, like I need to do this myself and like I can figure this out on my own. Like if you're floundering, you need to speak up. Like it's important and people want to help you. Like the thing is that you're going to do better work when you're not stressed or anxious, so you need to speak up. So I find for me being able to, you know, be in good communication with my manager, my team, et cetera, really helps. And also like I'm thankful at this point that I'm in enough like online communities between, you know, the Go community and whatever else and former coworkers and et cetera that I often have a place to vent or people to talk to if I need to, you know. So that's been pretty nice.
Yeah, I think those are good advice. I think for me, anxiety at work, I think when I started at Cockroach, I think I was pretty anxious. I think I had a good deal of trouble just like breaking in to understand like what the heck was going on with the company and the code base. It's a really complicated piece of software, and when I joined, it was small, right? It was like 20 people. Raphael, who asked the question, is in fact one of them, and they were all geniuses, man. Like they were all these people were like, you know, the like this is how I perceived it. There's like these are the core ultra skilled, you know, pro database programmers that like I'd one day aspire to be, and that was intimidating. Like for me, that was like, like, what do they expect me to be doing, and how is what I'm doing right now, or what I can do right now, different from what the expectations were? And I think for a lot of people, that's a big source of anxiety. Imposter syndrome, right? This is like just imposter syndrome. But just because it's just imposter syndrome, and just because like I sort of knew about the existence of imposter syndrome at that point, didn't mean that it was any easier. And I would say that it took me like, I don't know, 6 or 9 months before I felt like I had my feet under me. I really knew what was going on, and I could really like feel comfortable in my own shoes. And so when new people join Cockroach, and I assume this is probably similar at most jobs, I tell them like, I just try to make sure that they understand that imposter syndrome is super, super real for anybody. Even if you're, senior, right? Even if you join and you've been working in the industry for 15 years, it's going to take you a while to figure this stuff out, and people are going to be expecting things from you, but you have to remember, it's going to be okay. Everybody has onboarding, and onboarding takes like a long ass time to really feel comfortable, especially with a product that's as deeply technical as, the one that I happen to work on. Just it's monolithic. It's a big monolithic piece of software, and to understand some of it, sometimes it feels like you have to understand all of it. So I give people that advice. I don't know. I mean, that's not exactly like general anxiety. It's just sort of imposter syndrome, but definitely something that I tell new people.
Yeah, the whole imposter syndrome thing is really interesting for me because I feel like I felt it in certain areas. So, for example, in school, my school for a little bit had 2 computer science degrees, and I was able to get the more general one, which didn't require the advanced like algorithms, mathematical proofs, etc. And as a result, I've always felt a bit of imposter syndrome when it comes to like the algorithms and data structures and like all the the hyper efficient ways to do anything. It's like you ask me to calculate the time complexity, and it's like, yeah, I can give you an estimated guess and stuff like that, but that is a weak area for me. I'm very much a pragmatist. I like to build things. I don't really care as much about the academic aspects of computer science personally. Like, I think that they're very interesting. Stuff like, programming language theory is very cool. But yeah, I'm a practical person. I want to build software that solves a problem, right? So I think for me, coming to confront that has been difficult at times. But in general, I haven't really felt like general imposter syndrome, which I feel I guess in college, like I kind of came out of my shell. I gained a lot of confidence. I realized that like, I am a person who has value, and all I need to do is like present myself as such, and people will follow. Right. And I think that really helped me to avoid perhaps some of that. But definitely, like I said, like, early in your career, you need to be able to like willing to speak up and ask for help. And I remember in one of my first internships, not really feeling that way. And that was hard,
What was the first internship?
That would have been, let's see. So that would have been my first programming job, actually. My first, it was the PHP shop, but I was an intern at the time, and I was just struggling with something for a while. But the thing is with that company is that the management and et cetera was not set up well for junior employees or interns at all. It was kind of like, fix this thing, figure it out. And, you would just kind of flounder. And I did sometimes, and I would ask questions, but they didn't always give you the best answers either. Like, they wanted you to figure it out on your own. It wasn't really a good environment for that. But what are you going to do?
It reminds me like a little bit of the first internship that I had, which was, so I was in Chicago for school, and one of my TAs, so I was taking like the it was like intro CS class, basically, like the very basic thing. I think we were following like SICP, the structure interpretation of computer programming, or whatever it's called, from MIT, like the scheme thing. And so like, I guess I was doing well in the class or something, which wasn't always true. Like, I didn't do that well in school overall, but definitely that first year I did fine because the classes were easy. And my TA was like, hey, so I'm working at this like super early stage startup. Do you want to like do a part-time job there? And obviously, like, as a starry-eyed like youngster of age like 18 or whatever, I was like, absolutely, yeah, I'm totally in. I don't even care what the company is or like what it's doing. And so what the company was, it was called eConnectix. It doesn't exist anymore. And what they were doing was making RAM storage devices that were exposed as SAN like drives, essentially, like over fiber channel. I don't know if you've ever looked at that stuff. I never looked at it after this thing.
Yeah,
Sorry?
it's pretty sick.
It's pretty sick.
Oh, no, that's very cool. Yeah.
I mean, like, was it? I don't know. Like, so basically, it was just like a server full of RAM, and you plug it in via fiber channel to like something, and it's fast or something, right? So I don't know. Very weird. It was like just a few people, and I would come in every weekend, like on Saturday, and like basically work a whole day. But are you ready for this? The compensation for this job was it was essentially in a token, before tokens exist, of profit share. So in other words, I like theoretically was receiving like some fake equity in this company so that profit would be, distributed to the employees in some like arcane way, but I never got paid, right? So I worked for this thing for like a year. Wow. Writing Python. So my job was to write a health checking script. It was like a little daemon that ran on the server, and it was supposed to like check the temperature and like check whether the fans are still working and something, and like report, like a red green status essentially to some like web page. And they were just like, yeah, go do it. I didn't really get that much support, just like your thing was.
Yep.
And at the end of it, I had nothing to show besides like, I guess I had learned about how rapacious like random small startups are or something like that. That was depressing. Like those guys, total jerks.
Yeah, the place I worked is out of business too, and for similar reasons probably. They actually, it was really funny. I see the question in my chat. We will get there. I promise. I apologize. This is just a really interesting topic. When I was at that company doing the interview and stuff, like they said, we have offered both paid and unpaid internships in the past. And my friend who actually referred me there, I think his was unpaid, and I knew that going in. So I, kind of like balls of steel moment. I was like, I will only accept a paid position with this company. I have rent. Like I was prepared for this. It's like,
nice.
I have rent and bills I need to pay. And it's like, I will only accept a position if it's paid. And they're like, okay, we'll pay you this. And it's like, that's all it took. But the fact of the matter is that they could have potentially intimidated somebody into like not taking pay. And it's like, that is fucked. And like, you should never, I have friends who work in, lots of different fields and stuff. And like, I know in some industries, like unpaid internships are the norm, but in this field, you can do better. Like you don't need to take an unpaid internship. I don't think. I mean, I
don't. Is it still common now?
I'm speaking as a privileged white male who had a college education and stuff, and like I don't know everybody's life circumstances, but my personal opinion is that unpaid internships should not exist.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. I mean, that's pretty bad. Good for you for being confident right off the bat in your career.
Yeah, it helped.
What was your chat's question?
Yeah, here we go. So Coffee Shop Code asks, what is the perception of totally self-taught coders where you work? Do they exist? Do you think it is possible to break into the tech space if self-teaching is done efficiently? Yes, this is actually something I get a lot of people asking me about. So I think self-taught coders are actually kind of the norm in the industry in a lot of ways. Or like, I think there's a pretty good split between, college degree and self-taught. And I think that what I find is that my college degree and my CS classes there gave me more of the base experience, like the base knowledge for like understanding a variety of topics as well as learning how to learn. But I think for me in general, college was more important for me as a social growth, like personal growth. And frankly, I think you need some of both, right? Like I have met some self-taught programmers who are brilliant, but they may not necessarily either have some of the base knowledge about some of these things. Like you might not understand like, how memory is architected, the stack, the heap, the operating system, Linux system calls. Like you might know how to build like a web page and like whatever else, and like that's still good. But you might find that there are some gaps that could help be filled with like a degree or like a more broad knowledge. But conversely, I think that if I had only done what I did and didn't do any work or projects on my own outside of school, I would not be where I am. So I tell people all the time that school gave me that base knowledge, but my open source work has really been the key to my career. Like the fact that I said, like, I want to solve this problem and build this thing and do this and have something to show for it has been crucial for me. Like, I'm sure that's why I got the job at DigitalOcean. I'm sure it's why I got the job at Fastly. And it's like, now I know all these people everywhere. And I suspect it will continue to pay dividends for years to come,
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a really good take. I think for me, I learned a lot of programming before college, but I think where college for me took it to a different level of preparedness and like knowledge, I guess, wasn't really just the programming aspect. It's just as you say, it was kind of like some of this side theory that turns out to be super useful, right? Absolutely. Like understanding not just the language that you're working in, but also how the computer is working under the hood. Like I was talking earlier about this computer architectures class, which like I don't remember some of that stuff, but I think like you learn a lot of these concepts that just sort of stick in your brain that people eventually end up expecting that you like vaguely know.
Exactly. Yeah.
I took a databases class that turned out to be relevant, but I didn't know it. I took a computer graphics class, which was fascinating. You learn a lot of linear algebra in that. And like, this is not something that I really use again, but it's like, I don't know, I think it's enriching. So I guess like, this wasn't exactly an advice question from Coffee Coder, but if you have the means, I definitely recommend going to college. Even if like the social is good, but also just, you know, some of those background classes, like you can learn this stuff on the internet for sure, but like being sort of forced to do it in a sense, or like having the ability to have experts teach you things in a way that's structured, I think is like, you know, immensely valuable.
I think ultimately you need to be open to trying new things too. For example, because I started, I guess I did start with self-taught PHP, self-taught PHP, HTML, CSS like way back, and I built a couple of like personal sites and stuff like that, like very very basic stuff. And then when I went to school, I got more serious. But the thing is that I would not have found networking as my passion had I not taken like a computer networks course in school. And it's like, okay, I'm learning about sockets and BSD sockets, and it's like, okay, well, you can write a program that can do this thing on one computer, but suddenly when you've got computers talking to each other, things are much more interesting in my mind. So for me, like, networking has really been kind of that thing. But, there are folks who, Filippo, for example, Filippo was saying on his stream the other day that he is self-taught like cryptography. Like, I think I forget his exact background, but he like self-taught himself cryptography and like got a job at Cloudflare. And it's like, that's amazing, And it's like, I think cryptography is super cool. It doesn't personally interest me that much. I think it is very cool. I think that like the mathematics and the fact that it works at all and the fact that it's powering literally everything we're doing is incredible. But it's not something I really care to dive further into myself. But that being said, you have to try lots of different things to figure out like what you like. And it could be backend, it could be networking, it could be databases, it could be cryptography, it could be front end, it could be like whatever. The fact of the matter is like this field is so broad, like you need to try different things. And college gives you a good excuse to do that because you just get these different classes you have to take with different expertise. But ultimately, build projects, try new languages, do new things because you never know what you're really going to love.
Yeah, those are good words of advice. CryptoSci says, thing is, people with a CS degree are also self-taught in that sense. In order to be in the industry, you need to self-learn everything. That is a very good point. I think just in the sense that like you join a company, even if you have all the background, you have to constantly be learning, right? You can never really put it down. I think I agree with that.
Yeah, and I think that I think it's important definitely to continuously learn. And I recognize that chances are pretty good I will not be working in Go for my entire career, right? Like I guess it's possible that could be for quite a while longer. Like I think that I joined Go very early and now it's still rising. But I need to continuously learn new things and like keep myself relevant, And it's like I found for me like where that is just learning how these systems fit together or learning about like, Linux system calls and stuff like that or network protocols as a whole. So I can take that knowledge and transition it to different languages too,
Yeah. Somebody's asking if you could self-teach, in particular, data structures and algorithms for technical interviews.
I can't. I'm not. It's so funny because when I was joining Fastly, I bought Cracking the Coding interview and I was looking at it and I was just like, I'm not ready for this. Like I gave myself like a week to look at it. And I was like, I am so not ready for any of this. This is going to be a total disaster. And the interview I had did have like, there was like one data structures question kind of, but like, frankly, if you understand like the basic things like binary search tree, hash maps, like and when to employ these techniques, like you're probably going to be fine, right? And I do networking stuff, for example, and the prefix tree or the trie is a very common thing. But if you tell me to write one right now with no reference, like I probably can't. It's one of those things where you should have the ability to like you should understand like I wrote this code, it's not fast enough, and what can I do to make this faster? And understand that there probably is some algorithm or data structure that can help you, but I don't think it's useful to memorize all of these things for reciting them in an interview or whatever else, which is why I've never done like the Google interview or anything. I have no interest because I know I wouldn't pass. Like it's not anything I care to put myself through.
Yeah. Just like self-flagellate yourself in front of a bunch of people who are like disinterested in your humanity, right?
Yep, straight up.
I think like I don't know. I think you can, just as you were saying, like knowing when to use each of the basic classes of data structures and like the basic fundamentals of some of these techniques. I think that's doable, right? Like you're not going to be the best at lead coding or whatever. You're not going to like win any competitions necessarily, but I think like the basics, like when do you use a list? What's a list about? What's a hash map about? What is dynamic programming, just like from a vague sense of like, like the fact that they call it dynamic programming is a big fail for everybody. They really should have just called it like learn to cache a function, Like I
Okay.
think if they had
Yeah.
said something like that, then like people would be like, oh, okay, I actually sort of get this. Like it's not that
Yeah.
bad.
Well, so you said that, and like it didn't immediately register to me what that was. Like, yeah, it's so funny. Or like, all these concepts from school, like yeah, dynamic programming. Wow, like yeah, just use a cache, memoization, like whatever.
Exactly.
Like yeah, that's I feel like there are way better ways to describe that.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's like it comes from the like academic side of computer science, probably,
not my not my
because
not my
yeah,
area.
not your area. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I just realized I didn't post on Gopher Slack. Oops, we probably could have. No, we still got a good amount of between our two streams. We got a good amount of people going on. This is cool. So
You can post on the Slack, and everybody who's watching, by the way, you are very welcome to ask either of us questions or both. Stump the host and other host is the name of this game.
we'll do our best. Yeah, we yeah we got about another hour, so we're good to go. You know.
What are your favorite houseplants, and how did they get into your lives?
Oh, I actually have I've got a houseplant over here on my desk. I can't remember for the life of me what it's called. And is there water? Hang on a sec. Ta-da! Yeah, I've got one houseplant. It's got the Fastly FSLY IPO flag in it. It's pretty funny.
Nice.
Yeah, a friend gave this to me, and I was like, yeah, I wouldn't mind taking care of a plant. And she's like, okay, you can have this one. And then I just water it like once a week. I can't remember what it's called. What is this damn thing called? I don't know. Pothos? Is it a pothos? No, that doesn't seem right. I'm pretty bad about that stuff, but yeah. Anyway.
I'm lucky to have a girlfriend who loves taking care of plants, which means that I don't really take care of any plants. I feel I'm always a little embarrassed about it. It's like I should really know how to take care of plants.
Yeah.
Not that complicated, right?
I mean, for this one, like I just water this, like, when I was told the instructions I was given are when it looks like it needs water, give it water, and like that's it.
Yeah.
Like it's doing fine. I mean, there's not a whole lot of light. Like my place faces north, so the window right here doesn't have like a whole lot of light or anything. It still seems happy. So
nice.
Yeah, right on.
We've got some cactuses.
Oh, like cactuses are super cool. Yeah.
They've got personality, you know.
Yeah, exactly right. Also, on the topic of, self-taught data structures to algorithms, there is a lot of free content available. MIT OpenCourseWare and Intro to Algorithms course. Networking students, we don't cover much of the programming comp sci end of things. Interesting. Okay, cool. Good to know. Yeah, I know there's like between MIT and the MIT stuff and then like the Coursera, whatever, the Stanford, like there's tons of good resources online. I have a hard time making myself commit to that sort of stuff because frankly, it just doesn't interest me as much as network stuff.
It's the like having the fortitude to actually like go through one of those courses seems challenging.
Yeah.
Especially if you're also doing a full-time job at the same time. Maybe if you're preparing for your first job, it's a little bit different, but trying to start from that while you're also doing a job, it's like, oh my God, that just sounds like too exhausting.
Yeah, and I guess I find for me that like if I'm gonna do computer stuff outside of work, like I would rather it be a project that I care about or building something useful for me. And I don't know. I've got a bunch of like tech books, for example, I want to read and stuff, and there are things that will be useful for me, I'm sure, if I just spend the time reading them. So I need to actually do that. But
one thing that I actually did really like doing the few times that I did it on this topic was the advent of code stuff. Did you ever try that?
No, it's so funny because I know everybody was doing that pretty much, and I should just do it. Like I should just go back and do it because I am always looking for more excuses to use like Rust. Like I've done a couple of like decent sized projects in Rust, and I think what I really want to do is like write a networking thing with it. So I have this kind of my pipe dream project, like given infinite time, energy to do so, would be to write like essentially what is an SDN system like in Rust, like build like a data plane component that runs on all the machines like with Rust, and then write a control plane component and Go, like distributed consensus, whatever. And it's like, okay, I want to create this virtual tunnel between these two things, like doing all the VLAN and VXLAN, like whatever else. Like, I think that would be super cool. Like basically, imagine like what Open vSwitch is and like building like that in Rust, I think would be sick. But I don't even know where to get started. I mean, I have some idea of where to get started, but when it comes
just
to
like learning Rust.
Yeah, when it comes to like Rust in particular, like Rust networking and the async stuff, like I'm just not there yet. I need to look more into it, but given time and energy and everything to do so, that's probably what I would build, but just for fun.
Yeah. That makes sense. I think So like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I did the advent of code stuff just for fun. Like I actually, I think maybe in a little bit contrast to you, very much like solving artificial problems. Like it's quite fun for me. I just like happen to enjoy it. And so a couple of years, like I did sort of enjoy for a while, like, staying up until, 12 a.m. EST, which is when you have to stay up to like, if you want to try to do the AOC stuff. I just like trying to hammer out one of these solutions really quickly. But then, lately, I don't know, it's just too late at night. And I think without the thrill of the competition, I just don't care. Like I don't want to do it the next day and then like never get on the leaderboard for speed, even though it's like totally artificial and stupid. It's like it provides me like a little bit of motivation to like get one of these things done.
See, I feel like if I wanted to go for speed, like I would just do it and go and just like crank it out.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess in this case, like I find that if I'm gonna do some new project, like challenge myself, it's like if I'm writing software, like I want to get something done, like I'm gonna do it and go for sure, just because that's just where I'm familiar. But for example, I did the interpreter book and stuff in Rust and the compiler book, the Susquehanna in Rust, and I thought that was super fun. It gave me an excuse to use that language, which is great.
Yeah, cool. So a question from a little bit ago was, what is the single feature that you wish that Go had?
Well, we're probably getting our generic data structures and stuff, so that'll be good. I actually am looking forward to that. I think that it will be very useful to, having like, I care about generic containers. That's really all I care about. I don't really care as much about the functions, but when it comes to like having generic containers, I think that will be very useful. But I think in general, I don't know. I guess that would probably be the first thing that comes to mind. But frankly, Go meets most of my needs really well, and I can't really think of lots of things that I would change. Like I have come to embrace Go for being so different and making people angry when it comes to like super computer sciencey, super researchy academic people. Like I love that it makes them angry because Go is a very pragmatic language, and I'm a very pragmatic person. I want to engineer things and get stuff done.
Yeah. What are the things that make people upset about Go? Out of curiosity, the academics.
People say stuff like Go ignores the last 40 years of programming language theory research, stuff like that. Like it's basically going back to like C, and like stuff like the error handling is too verbose and whatever else, and or the type system isn't elegant enough. And it's like these are all like perhaps valid complaints under some lens, but when you're presenting them purely from an academic perspective, like I just don't care. It's like the fact of the matter is that like I personally have written software that's running on tens of thousands, if not millions, of machines around the world in Go, and it's like you can't tell me it doesn't work.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think for me, I wish that Go had sealed union types. That's one thing that I just
so you mean like a Rust like enum, right? Like exhaustive. Yeah, I would like that as well. Actually, that is something that does come to mind for me.
That's something that I feel like the type theorists would complain about that, but I think that's like a very practical concern actually, because just think about how many times that you've had to do that the switch statement with the default, and like what if you forget to add a case to all the places that you're using the enum or something. It's like just kind of sucks. The tooling doesn't really help you enough there.
Well, so Dominic has actually mentioned Dominic has talked about once we have like generics, essentially you could write like switch assert exhaustive X something, and you can actually write like a static check module or something that says like you need to handle every single case for this type.
Yeah,
which I think is incredibly cool. And if that does end up happening, Dominic's actually, I see he's here right now, so perhaps he can provide more info. But I think that's an incredibly cool idea, and I will absolutely use that if it becomes like something that we can rely on.
I think the feature that I wish that Go had the most, it's more of like a desire than a feature, is it would definitely be better control. Okay, wait. No. There's so many things that I wish Go had. Okay, let me start from heap dumps. I would like a heap analyzer for heap dumps. That's it. It's not that complicated.
Is this a conversation we're going to need whiskey for?
I don't know. Could be. It could be. This could be like the depressing half of the hour or whatever.
Well, we're coming up on an hour left, so I did bring some whiskey. I saw somebody mention that in the chat, so I think now could be a good time if we're gonna complain about things we want and go.
Okay, sounds good. You.
I can run the show. All right, so we've got Hakushu 18 year. Should be very good. I'm very excited. Nice Japanese whiskey. Hey, cheers, friends. See, I didn't want to do this at the very beginning because it's a Friday night. Happy Friday, y'all! Thank you for being here with us. This is a lot of fun. It's a Friday night. We can chill out, have a good time, drink some whiskey, complain about our favorite programming language. I don't have too many complaints. I legitimately don't. I see there's let's see here. If it's rant time, you're leaving to sleep. I don't think it's gonna be rant time necessarily, but I guess we'll see. Oh, by the way, so Dominic did. Oh, you don't have your headphones on, but Dominic did just reply. He's been informed that Go's inlining sucks so much his exhaustive X might have a runtime cost. Got to wait till there's a better inliner. Interesting. Okay, so the exhaustive check library or whatever might have to wait for better inlining. But
what? I don't get that.
It's just what Dominic said. Like, he's been informed that the Go inliner sucks so much that might have to wait for. It might have a runtime cost, so we got to wait till there's a better inliner. So,
I guess I'm trying to understand. I guess what the inliner would have to do with the exhaustivity check. I don't see the connection.
I guess presumably, like, I would think it's just the identity function, right? Like, you give it an input, it returns that same input. It can just be elided, but I don't know enough about the compiler, So.
Well, okay. So here's the whiskey that I've chosen. It's probably really weird and not advanced. Da-na. Wait. Da-na. Wait.
There we go. Hudson Whiskey, New York. Nice.
It's local whiskey.
Very cool.
We're all about local here on the stream.
Heck yeah. Yeah, you and I have been talking about Japanese whiskey, so I had to pull out my Hakashu. But yeah, heck yeah.
Nice. Okay. Well, we'll have a little bit of whiskey and continue talking about Go. What a fun time. This is a good idea. I'm glad that we've done this, by the way. It's been quite fun.
Yes, we're going for about another hour, everybody. Or about another hour-ish. I've got plans at 7, but we figured a couple hours would be a good time for this to start, and then we can always we can always do this again. I mean, it seems like we actually made an agenda. We were kind of worried, or we weren't worried, but it's like we thought like we had a list of things we could talk about if we need to, right? And I haven't even opened it yet, so we've got enough questions and things flowing that I'm not worried about it. So
yeah. So Dominic says inliner is primitive and AST based. So say you do exhaustive of foo, and foo is a function, then that might prevent foo from being inline because the compiler considers it too expensive to inline now. I see. So exhaustive is not, it wouldn't be any kind of like annotation. It would be some sort of like actual callable function thing.
Yeah, I think the intent would be to make like an actual package, like you create like assert dot exhaustive, and it's just an identity function. So that's why I figured it could just be perhaps elided.
Got it. Yeah, you said that, and I just didn't connect the dots. That actually makes a lot of sense.
I see. Yeah.
I see. Well, I suppose you could do it with annotations or something like that. Like just a regular old static check annotation could probably do it, right?
Yeah, I guess that would be a question for Dominic.
A Dominic question. Yeah. Dominic should join the chat. That would be fun.
Exactly.
We there's room for you on the couch, Dominic. Just you could join the Zoom at any time.
Right. Yeah.
Chachi, thank you for joining the conversation, by the way.
Yeah, much appreciated. Thank you all for hanging out. We appreciate it.
Yes. So there was another question that I wanted to go to.
And by the way, I don't think we're gonna like rant. That was a joke. My apologies. We're not gonna, I'm sure we all could rant if we wanted to, but
I think we're both pretty positive people. I think it's pretty hard for me to just go off on a true rant, to be honest.
I find negativity exhausting, honestly. So
with generics, I wanted to have a generic identity function that acts as a tag to static check. I really dislike abusing comments and would rather not add more of them. That makes sense.
I see. So it's just it's an alternative choice. So there could be a new like tag or something or a new annotation. I kind of wish Go had first class support for annotations at this point. Like these magic comments are, a thing.
Yeah. That like the Java. I mean, even the stuff that Java has. I don't know if you've ever used Java, but the at annotations that you can slap on things.
I was thinking of that, or Rust. You've got the hash sign with the brackets. Like those sorts of things are pretty useful. With Rust, you can actually turn off things like the Rust formatter and stuff for just a certain block of code, which is pretty wild.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
I think I always remember getting pretty, I don't know, the annotation stuff in Java. It's just really magic. I think that's the issue with it, right? It's it really takes it from a language that's straightforward to a language that has untold magic and interceptors and like all sorts of insane like meta behavior that you can specify. And it's like,
Yep.
I think you run the risk if you introduce stuff like that to any language that people can just like start to go crazy and like just build all sorts of like insanity.
Oh,
Which
100%. And
might be
it's so
weird.
interesting coming to Go because like Go, touts itself as like a more simple language, like, just straightforward, more concrete behavior, etc. And I think that the Go community has really embraced that in lots of ways. So for the folks who've been around for a long time, I remember back in, I think it was 2014 or 2013 when I was first using Go, there was a web framework called Martini, and Martini was picking up some steam. And it was a very cool project. But the thing is with Martini is that it used empty interface and I believe like reflection. So depending on the function
Mm.
signature you pass into it, like if you return a string, it's going to put that in the HTML page, or there are different things you could do. And it was very cool and very productive, but it was just a little too magic. And it was one of the first big things in the Go community where people were really divided because some people really liked it because it was very concise and you can make like a web page or an
Yeah.
API very easily. But lots of people also had a problem with it because you have the empty interface, the lack of type safety, possible runtime panics. Like I think these days, I definitely go more towards the static approach, like static, compilation, strong types, etc. But I can certainly understand the utility of something like Martini.
Yeah. Yeah. Doesn't like some of part of the standard library use interface like empty interface methods? So like, doesn't JSON
Yeah, I
deserialization
mean
use that
the
and stuff?
JSON stuff like has to be it's all reflection, like
Right.
because it has to read the struct tags and figure out everything, and yeah, it's all like that.
Yeah. Martini got discontinued since it wasn't a idiomatic Go.
Yes, yes. Martini, actually, the author of Martini wrote another one called Negroni, and I believe that the author of Martini is now not even part of the community, which is kind of sad. So my hope is that the community did not push him out.
Mm-hmm.
Like the fact of the matter is that you need to realize that it's important to separate like people and their code, and just because you don't like their code doesn't mean you need to attack that person or their work. Like that is something critical, right? So for example, I'm not a big fan of Java or big fan of PHP or anything anymore, but it's like I'm not going to go out of my way to hate on people who like those things because that's not right. Like you need to realize that like people get plenty of productive work done with these languages and they have value, and ultimately not everybody shares your preferences. So
Yeah, 100%. I think, I don't think that, I mean, one would truly hope that they didn't push this person out of the community because of their, empty interface. But like,
yeah,
I think the Go
I'm not
community
sure.
maybe like started a little bit more toxic and it's grown less toxic over time.
I
Maybe.
think so too. Yeah, especially just with more and more people, it tends to dilute a little bit. But the groups like the Gopher Slack and stuff are pretty good.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
in general, there can occasionally be a little bit of like what I think is some heavy-handed moderation or whatever. But ultimately, I think things are very good these days.
I think that the Gophers the Gophers Slack, if you guys aren't in it, definitely should join it. Especially the performance channel. Performance
Oh,
channel is like you're gonna learn a lot
the
about Go
best.
in the performance channel. I think I've asked like my fair questions on that thing, and people are always just super helpful. Um,
Oh, it's the
and
best.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, performance is one of my favorite channels. I basically treat it as general.
yeah,
Like it's my general channel, but it's smaller, right?
right.
Like general has 40,000 people, performance has 3,000, and it's the same consistent people. But like you can ask a question, like if you have some question, like I want to know this specific thing, that is a good place to ask, and you might be directed somewhere else. Like we have the networking channel, which is smaller as well. I think it's like 700 or 800 people, and we tend to talk about a lot of weird stuff in there, but it's fun. But performance is a very good place to ask if you have like some kind of like non-trivial Go question. Like somebody will point you in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. How has Google involvement support on Go changed over the years?
Uh,
I
from
basically have
my
no idea.
from my perspective, it's effectively either the same or better. Like I think that those of us who've been in the community know that there have been certain things like the whole depth versus Go modules thing that were not necessarily handled as well by Google, the Go team, the community, etc. as possibly could have. But that being said, I think in general things have been pretty good. What I find interesting is like with the Rust community, for example, I believe they have like the Rust Foundation now, and Rust really is no longer as much a Mozilla project as a true community project with community governance. And in the Go project, for example, like I have commit access to the Go repos and stuff, but ultimately, like I don't choose who accepts like proposals and things like that. So I would love to see Go perhaps bring in some more of the community members for things like proposals or language changes or etc. But that being said, uh, if you are willing to do the work and write a good proposal and answer and address questions and stuff, like you can actually affect change and Go too. It's just ultimately Google still, some folks at Google still retain kind of the ultimate control of what goes in or out. And for better or worse, that is what it is. I think that there are lots of things in Go over the years that I'm glad did not make it in. Stuff like the for example, the check handle or whatever, like the check error, handle error, stuff like that. Like I think that was a little too magic, and I'm glad that was eventually shot down. But
yeah, I don't know. I just thinking about like governance. I think that realistically, trying to make it possible for people to participate as seamlessly in that decision making process as probably it is internal to Google would be impossible. Like I think they would have to like reinvent their entire process, or else people would just ultimately feel left out every time, even if they like sometimes extended some olive branches to people to be like, come join our like community RFC process, like we can actually have voice in-person meetings or whatever. They didn't do that all the time, then all of a sudden it would just be like tiered again. And I just don't think at this point realistically that it's ever going to be something that's like as completely open and community driven as another project like Rust. But honestly, like it's probably fine. Like I think that having a BDFL, which isn't exactly the same as what Go is, I guess, but it's like it's not too dissimilar, I guess. It's like a benevolent dictator organization for life or something.
Yeah, I mean, for better or worse, like Go has succeeded, it's thrived, and like there have been very few like major missteps.
For worse, did you say for better or for worse?
I said for better or worse. Yeah, I mean, like the thing is like for example, as I mentioned, like the whole. I sat out the dep and the modules thing. Like I personally had no horse in the race, and I didn't care. Like I just want something that is a blessed thing that I can count on and make it work, and I'll use it. But I understand there were some unfortunate there's some unfortunate fallout from that, and hopefully some lessons learned. And I hope that things will improve in the future. But that being said, I'm not part of the Go tools group, but I know the tools group, like there are lots of folks in the community who collaborate regularly with the Go team. Like the people who work on editor integrations, Dominic with Static Check, the folks who work on Go Please at Google. Like I understand the collaboration there is very, very good. And they have like open meetings and open agendas. And I think that's an awesome thing. And I would love to see that with like, the runtime or the compiler or the standard library. Like it would be very cool to have more of that. Right.
Yeah. I think at one point, there was like a couple of folks from the Go team came to meet with Peter Mattis, our Cockroach Labs' CTO. So we had like a little internal meeting about like, what are the things that you wish that Go had? And I remember we talked about generics a bit. We talked about like memory monitoring a little bit. We talked about heap dumps a little bit. And I think there was one thing that they actually did accept and do for us, which I didn't find out until GopherCon, which is that I think it was me who was complaining that there isn't machine readable support for the stuff that GC assert looks at, right? Like all of those compiler decisions, like inlining decisions or bounce check eliminations. And then like I guess like maybe one of them took that and made it better by adding that like -JSON flag, which I didn't even know about until like, who was it? I forget. Somebody in the GopherCon Discord was like, oh, by the way, we added that, and I think that you guys were the ones who asked for it, so maybe you should be using it in GC assert. And I was like, oops, yeah, good point, thank you. So I don't know. Anyway, the point is that like I do think that there is a level of community. It's like product management fundamentally, right? It's like I think literally it was led by, I forget his name, but the PM for the Go language came along and sort of led that meeting. It's like, yeah, it makes sense. You got to listen to your users if you're a product, especially one that has like these giant, users like you guys, Kubernetes, Cockroach Labs. Like there's certain things that like power a whole industry, and it probably behoves the language owners to listen. And kind of sounds like they do.
Yeah, I think in general they do, and I think that, like I said, if you have like a well thought out concern and there truly is no alternative. So, for example, something that I wanted and needed for years was support for the Go runtime network polar with socket types that are not supported by the standard library, and this took up until let's see.
What's a socket type that wouldn't be supported by the standard library?
Netlink sockets, VSOC, AF packet on Linux, AF elg, like. I think I've done like 4 or 5 different Go socket packages that use this technique now, but up until Go 111 and 112, 112 was where things finally locked in. Mm-hmm. Basically, there was no way to get the runtime to efficiently work with your Go routines and like, this Go routine's doing IO, so put it to sleep. We can use epoll on here and run an OS thread for like the epoll operation, but the Go routines can be scheduled elsewhere. Like all this stuff, like the runtime does all these things for you for TCP, UDP, Unix sockets, stuff like that. But for alternative socket types like Netlink or packet sockets or VSOC, you couldn't do that. So I
Mm,
had to implement either my own epoll, all that stuff,
yeah.
and still have Go routines like not being as efficiently scheduled as they could be. But ultimately, there were a couple of proposals, and I kind of followed these for years, and I just didn't really have the knowledge, frankly, to implement these myself. But
Yeah.
myself and several others complained for a very long time or gave use cases, and ultimately it worked out. And as of Go 112, like I'm able to hook into the runtime in exactly the ways I need. I can say like, hey, I want to perform a read on this socket, and if it's not ready, the Go runtime can put this back to sleep and whatever else, and it
Yeah.
works great. And as a result, now like all of my networking packages, like Go 112 is pretty much the cutoff these days. Like I do my best to retain older support, but my Netlink package, as of version 1.2, we finally dropped Go 111, and I'm really glad because I was doing
That
lots of work to maintain that.
that's
But
like, yeah, that makes sense. That's pretty cool. That's pretty
yep.
great. It kind of reminds me of the custom context thing, where for a while like you could implement your own custom contexts, but they would be really inefficient because the package that like traverses the cancellation tree over contexts had like special fast paths only for the Go implemented contexts.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
And they fixed that. I mean,
it did. Okay.
I think as of like maybe this version, I can't remember.
That was something I saw people discussing, but I actually never followed up on that because I was. So I guess in that case, like I've actually never implemented my own context type. I was working with a team once, and they wanted to create their own. I think it was a context which could detach from the cancellation of its parent. So it could have its own cancellation tree, but it could be completely detached from the parent. Like if it gets to this point, I don't want this to be cancelable anymore, but this can have its own tree. So I think some of my coworkers implemented one of those previously. But what's your use case?
That sounds cool. It sounds complicated. I guess it vaguely reminds me of like how in open tracing you can like fork off
Mm-hmm.
a trace that's like has a separate lifetime or something like that.
Right.
I don't know. Anyway, our use case was actually just about performance stuff. I think I talked a little bit about this on the stream at one point, which was that like basically we use contexts for log tags is one thing that we use them for, and log tags tend to be emitted a lot, and it turns out that just sorry okay wait let me go back for a second. The log tags need to be able to look inside of the context to get out where they're sort of being logged from. Is it what's the node ID, for example, or like what's the range ID or whatever. And so in order to make sure that that's possible, you always have to be populating the context with this crap. Like your node ID is 1 every time a request comes in. Your node, your range ID is 5, and all of those things allocate because of the way that contexts are set up with interface values. And so the dream would be that we could have a custom context that like had static slots in the struct for these things that we're always setting inside of the context's like key value map, and that way we would never have to allocate every request. And so that's the use case, right? Like, and we couldn't do that because it turns out that like the context cancellation path was like too expensive or whatever. I don't really remember if you had the custom context. Now that it's there, like theoretically, I think we could do better, but then again, nobody's had the time. I know you have thoughts about the like key value stuff in the contexts. You say that you never use it ever, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think my personal opinion is that like for the key values in the context, I think the one use case I have capitulated is the like trace IDs. So
Right.
if you have a trace ID and you want to plumb it through your systems, like that is the one thing I think is okay. But if you are passing a logger or a database connection or a user struct or something,
Yeah.
like I think you're getting yourself in trouble in that case.
I agree. I think yeah. If it's anything that's like actually related to your application's functioning, it's like
Yeah.
no. But yeah, tracing. I mean, this logging stuff is like basically the same kind of thing as tracing. It's like, and Java actually has reasonably good support for this, like with that interceptor stuff I was talking about earlier with
Right.
the annotations. And it's like, I guess Go gives you, all right, well, it's like kind of like an okay, like super allocation heavy like context thing that now you can overload. So it's fine, actually, no problem. No hate towards the Go team for that, right? You can implement your own context, like it's all possible.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because like I think most of my complaints with the context stuff like the key values is that it is it's a map string interface, which is a bag of named things.
Yes.
The empty interface can really get you in a lot of trouble. Like
Yeah.
you can really. Oh, I got a DM on Go for Slack, and it's like, what did I do now? Never mind, we're good. Yeah, I think the thing is that like the map string interface, like you can just get yourself in trouble, and it's so easy to like you know end up with like type switch spaghetti and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
it's just not fun. So
I mean, you could implement like an entire Python interpreter just inside of a context, right? Like, aren't Python objects literally just like maps from string to interface?
I mean probably like that's what it is in PHP. PHP is all like associative arrays, and yeah, that's a thing. Um,
Yeah.
I remember what was it? So I was consuming so for Subsonic is an old school like Java media server thing. It has an XML API, but it also has a JSON mode. So for Subsonic in the JSON mode, like whatever Java library it has, like when it's converting from the XML representation to the JSON, if you have, for example, an album with one song, it would return an object with just that one song. But as soon as there's two, it now becomes the same key has an array of objects with the same fields. So
Oh
I
no.
was writing a Go library for this thing, and it's like, okay, well, in this case, it's this thing, but if there's an array of this thing, it's this thing. And like, it's just this whole huge mess, and I just can't believe that like APIs could ever do that, you know. And in some languages it's fine, but in Go it's not, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if you have something that sort of like allows you to like zero index a non like list type, maybe it would be fine. But like
Yeah.
maybe there's like some no, no.
I mean,
Doesn't seem good.
the answer is that if something can have one or more
Yeah, you just like
elements,
return a list with zero things in
it should
it.
always be an array. Yeah, that's exactly it. Like it should be an array with zero elements, an array with one element. Like that's exactly it. But
Yeah.
in this particular case, whatever library this was using would return a literal JSON object instead of an array, and that was a huge thing.
Somebody earlier was asking about dependency injection. Well, they were talking about annotations in Java
Oh,
and dependency injection. What do you think about dependency injection?
if by dependency injection you mean pass parameters to functions, then that's my answer. Like you don't need a dependency injection container. You pass parameters to functions. Your main is the stuff that figures out things like environment variables and whatever else, and from there it's just a string and the rest of your application, and you're done. And you will make your code, you will make your life much easier that way. Your code will be much more testable. I have very strong feelings about this one. So
Yeah, I think like one thing that I've never understood is that word container. People are like, it's a dependency injection container. And I'm
yeah,
like, what? What is like the container that is really under? Like when
well,
people talk about that, they just mean it's like it's a whole mess of crap, and you can be like, when you see this interface, give me this struct. But like, where's the container? I don't get it.
yeah. So the container, I think, is like people have like a global thing, like dependencies, and that this dependencies can be injected everywhere, and then like you do dependencies.get and you pass for the type of the thing or whatever else, and it's just this whole mess. Like I did this in C# for a little bit, and never again.
We used container as the map of the type of the current implementation. Okay, that
Right.
makes sense.
Yep.
We use that in Java land. We use Juice, which is what CryptoSci was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I actually like, I think this is the thing with any tool, and maybe one reason why Go is actually so great in general, which is that like, whatever level of complexity a tool gives you, you're going to want to use it to its full extent, like every time. And so like Juice is this like super powerful, like mega crazy thing where you can like, wire all of your dependencies up and like make everything completely hot swappable or whatever. And then you like learn about it. You're like, oh my God, it's so cool. Like what if like there's a child of this and it needs to have a different dependency, but only in these circumstances. And like, there's all these things you can do. You can go crazy, completely crazy.
Yeah.
You could, develop all this crap and it all works perfectly. But then in the end, you're left with garbage.
Yeah.
And so I guess my point is that Go is great because it doesn't give you a lot of rope to hang yourself with or something.
Yeah, you have to show restraint, and I think when everybody comes to Go, you end up in a situation where we have Go routines and channels, so why not use them everywhere? Async is faster,
Right.
and you realize quickly that while they are powerful, you are making your code into spaghetti.
Yeah.
And you will eventually learn the restraint. And I think it'll be the same thing with generics and whatever else too. Is that
Yeah,
people,
true.
people will learn restraint. One would hope,
People, I think that I struggle with channels, man. Channels are hard. Like to get all the semantics. Like I always have to relook up this exact semantics of channels every single time.
Yep.
And then it's like it's like a sharp knife. You can really badly cut yourself with it if you're not careful. And because it's all concurrent, you won't like notice until later. So I guess channels they're difficult.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is that like when you're employing Go routines and channels, you need to understand exactly how they work. Like if you're starting a Go routine, you need to know when it'll stop. If you're creating a channel, you need to know like what happens if this channel is blocking the sender, what happens if it's blocking the receiver, what happens if I close it on this side, that side. Like you're gonna get yourself in trouble pretty quick. But
I think that's what's so great about the like wait group and error group um,
as
abstractions,
they take care of some of those, yeah, like returning errors from a channel. Yeah, it gets rid of that whole need.
which is horrible. I mean, like
Yes.
without
Right.
that stuff, it's like you always have to set up this like ridiculous boilerplate that's like a real pain in the butt, honestly. And like you sort of like multiplex, like the error channel is used both for termination and for like giving any errors back, and it's like you always forget how it works and it's buggy probably. So error group is great, and
Yeah, air
it was
group and
pretty recent,
context.
right? It didn't always exist.
Yeah, air group and then the context package. Like I use context for everything now. Like I saw people, some folks at work were passing around like quit channels, and it's like let's use a context. Like this should be synchronous. Use a context to like every function blocks until the context cancels. Like stuff like that will make your life much easier.
Yeah.
We have a question in my chat, not related to Go. So, how do you handle being involved in many communities and keeping track of messages? So, things like Gopher, Slack, work chats, personal gaming. Do you like the native Slack app and use it to swap between organizations, or do you use the apps that bundle the various chat applications into one surface? So, for me, actually, I have 3 monitors. So, all day over here on my far right side, I have work Slack, Gopher Slack, and a friend's Slack, and then I have like my text messages, and other things. Like I have tabs. Like I've got like 7 tabs open all day with different messengers, and for better or worse, that's what I make do with, and it works fine for me. I mean, I know there are probably more efficient ways, or I could do like IRC bridges for everything, but I don't personally mind that much.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I just use like the regular native apps for everything. I've got like a gajillion like Slack orgs, but they like notify you, so it's like not that bad.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that like besides the fact that Slack is written in Electron, it's good.
Yeah.
I did try out that like. Did you try that thing? Like this one guy has been writing this chat app in this new language that he's working on at the same time. It's like the one program written in this language, and it's like a chat app that works for Slack and Discord. And it's supposed to be it's like a tiny little binary, and it's like super efficient.
Interesting.
I did try that out, but didn't stick with it because it doesn't have like all the stuff. It's like I think it's V, right? VLang.
Oh yeah, V. Okay, yeah, V is a whole thing. I know Christine has had a lot of opinions about V and etc. And
Yeah.
yeah.
How do you know Christine?
Christine and I met actually at GoCon Canada.
Okay.
But also we've interacted on Gopher Slack and everything for a long time.
Oh, got it.
It's pretty funny. The V is for vaporware blog.
Yeah, exactly. Great blog post.
That really blew up. That was so funny.
And she'll just like retweet that thing every time like there's a new release from the V person. Everyone's like, oh, I see.
Oh, I love it. It's so good.
Yeah. I used to like back in the day, like in high school and stuff, I think I was really obsessed with trying to like coalesce all of my chat apps into like a single thing. Did you ever use like Adium or whatever?
Yeah, I use Pigeon for a little bit.
Pigeon.
Yeah, yeah.
That's okay. By the way, you were asking in the beginning of the chat about like who should you follow on Twitch that isn't a Go programmer. The
Yeah.
Pigeon guy does Twitch. Have you seen his
Really?
stuff?
No,
Yeah.
I did not. No. Okay.
I forget his name, but yeah, he just like sits around and does open source PRs and like closes issues for Pigeon and stuff like that, like or like Lib Purple or whatever it's called.
Right. What a confusing name.
Lib Purple Pigeon.
Yeah, I love how seed libraries are all like lib something, and then the something is completely
random,
like arcane. Yeah, you have no idea what this is for.
Yeah. Here's a question for you, actually. Uh oh. I clicked something. I broke my. Oh no.
Oh no. Oh no.
The illusion is gone. Okay, there we go.
There we
go. My question for you was: can you talk about what you do? Like, what's like your current project at work?
Yeah, sure. So it's been pretty cool. I just changed teams pretty much end of December or like middle of December. And I'm actually building software right now that is using my Netlink package and Jason Manetti's RT Netlink package. So I'm writing software that helps manipulate the routing tables on fastly caches. So that's pretty cool. So
wow.
I think that as far as like the details of what we're doing, like, probably can't really share at the moment, or it's still work in progress. But yeah, we are using my open source Go code and deploying it at Fastly, and that's pretty cool. And I know It's being deployed in lots of other places too. So
that's pretty sick, dude. That's like the dream, honestly.
The way it was phrased to me was very funny. So before I changed teams, they were saying they were trying to hire someone who knew things like Go, Linux, networking, routing, stuff like that. And they're like, wait, like we have somebody at the company who knows those things and wrote the library that we're going to use. And like,
oh wow,
yeah, it's pretty cool. So I had a really good time on my old team and everything, but this opportunity presented itself, and they're like, hey, we could really use your help with this project, and I was able to switch over. So yeah, it's been very fun so far. and I'm looking forward to continuing to work on that, and then eventually get that deployed. I think it would be a pretty cool thing to talk about publicly once we're more ready with it.
Yeah, nice. Wow,
Yep.
that's pretty great. So, can you also tell me, like, just like explain, like, I'm five, Fastly, what products does it make?
So marketing wants me to tell you we are an edge cloud platform, but it's basically a CDN, right? It's yeah, I mean the idea with like Fastly is like you have content located in one place and you want to make it fast, distributed all over the internet.
Hmm.
And now we're getting into more things like we've got like the web security stuff for like the edge compute where you write like applications that are compiled to WASM, like from like Rust to
Right,
WASM,
right,
and then
right.
compiled native codes. That's pretty cool. Like the edge compute, like essentially like serverless type stuff is pretty
Yeah,
neat.
yeah.
Um,
So
but as far
if
yeah,
I'm like a website owner and I want to use Fastly, is that a use case? I can be like, Fastly, I would like to use your CDN, or is it like routed through a bunch of other providers and stuff?
oh yeah, I mean you certainly could. Like I mean I personally, it's kind of funny because like I personally am not a Fastly customer. It's like I just don't really have the need,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And like for my stuff I use Netlify just because Netlify also has its own CDN yada yada built in, easy enough. But yeah, I mean basically like if you have a website that is high traffic and you want to make sure it's a good experience for people or add like more features for security and whatever else or the compute stuff, like yeah, we do all sorts of things, so
Cool. And so coming back to what you said you were working on,
yep.
routing tables. Tell me about how routing tables are used for the Fastly product. And this sounds like a basic question, but honestly, I don't know anything about networking. So teach me about it.
Yeah, basically, so like you think of the internet, right? And like you get the diagram where the internet is this cloud and you've got like your computer and one arrow in that's this cloud and like whatever, you don't really care how it works. Well,
Mm-hmm.
we care very much, right?
Right.
So the whole idea with the internet is that for example, the Google DNS server 8888, right?
Yeah.
Like that is being served from many locations all around the world using BGP Anycasts. It's like this IP address is reachable at these places, and we advertise it. So for example, like when I ping my 8888, it's
Yeah.
probably located in like some pop in Chicago or maybe Detroit or maybe Toronto on a bad day. But the fact of the matter is the topology of the internet is constantly changing. And as a result, like there might be a new faster path or better way to get somewhere due to some outage, due to some new link, due to higher capacity, due to some news event going on. And as a result, like we might, for example, Fastly, we might know that we can get the traffic to perform better by sending it over this link right now versus this link versus whatever else. So kind of the goal of the project I'm working on is to make more intelligent decisions about that. Like given some address or some place we want to reach, we are able to effectively figure out what the best path is at any given time and like make adjustments accordingly. So that is kind of the point. Like the thing is with like routing tables is that it works using a concept called longest prefix match. So
Yeah.
the more specific a route is, that is where the more specific a route, the more bits your route matches. Like that route will be preferred over a more general one. So we know that for my connection to get to you, like chances are pretty good it's going to go through like Toronto to Buffalo to New York, possibly whatever.
Yeah.
But going somewhere else, it could be completely different, right? So
That's interesting. Wait, so okay, I have two questions.
yeah,
One question was when you said, okay, so you said that 8.8.8.8 is an Anycast BGP IP address, which means that there's more than one computer that is serving requests from the 8.8.8 DNS.
yeah, they're probably
thing.
literally thousands or tens of thousands. Like
That makes a lot of
like,
sense. I was
they
always
have that-
wondering, like,
yeah.
how does it even work? I see.
Yeah,
Well, that's pretty unusual because most of the time, computers only have one IP address, I thought, or rather,
so, like,
opposite direction.
Yeah, so like they're able to like essentially advertise like I am capable of serving traffic for this address, and like based on
I see.
Google or whoever is like peered with Fastly or your ISP or whoever else, and they'll say like, hey, I can get to 8888 in 2 hops instead of like 5 hops or whatever else, so it'll go there instead.
And so what's stopping from like a random person from being like, I am 8.8.8.8?
This is a thing that happens. Like it does happen, but in theory, like there's supposed to be like security controls in place, and there's like BGP security mechanisms and such, or RPKI is another one of those things. I've never dealt with these things in the real world, but yeah, not enough things. Yeah, the fact of the matter is that like people get it wrong all the time, and as a result, like there are things like all of the YouTube traffic gets sent to Canada or something, or like people fat finger something, and suddenly you're melting this one pop in wherever. Like the fact of the matter is it happens, but the internet is not like this big homogenous cloud, right?
Yeah.
Like it's all interconnected systems with independent operators making agreements and doing all these different things to like, say like, hey, well, we agree we'll send you traffic this way as long as you peer with us here and whatever else. Like
Right.
series of like loose agreements, and then like using these routing protocols to say like, hey, you can reach this and this many hops from me.
I see. But so these BGP rules, or which is what kind of controls this stuff, those are, you can't just like publish one unless you own one of these backbones, essentially.
Unless you have like IP space. Like so, for example, like I here at my house I have Charter as my ISP and I have an LTE backup connection. In theory, I could get two different ISPs, and if I had my own IP address space and my providers would both accept BGP, I could actually announce to both my providers that, hey, my IP address space that I own is reachable over this link and this link. And I could actually have like multi-homing. So my traffic is capable of being reached from two different transit links or two different ISPs. But you need like a business connection to do that, and then making agreements and stuff like that. Like residential, it's not going to happen. Like they're not going to allow you to run BGP sessions.
Wow. Wait, that's so complicated.
Yeah. That's the internet.
Is it? Wait, so a BGP session?
Yeah.
Does that mean that you're running a kind of service that listens over a certain port, or is it like some?
Yeah, it's BGP. I think BGP is. I think it's TCP port 123. I forget exactly. I've never actually delved into BGP as a protocol. I think it'd be fun, but like I said, since I'm on a residential connection, TCP 174. Thank you. TCP port 174. Like I forget exactly. Like, somebody else has 179. 179 sounds right, actually.
Wait,
it's
so
but yeah,
but so ISPs will all basically prevent you from serving anything on 179 to prevent this problem?
Presumably, yeah. Like wow. I assume they just got it firewalled off for residential connections, and then for business, like they probably allow it. They allow it, and they make an agreement with you that like, hey, we're going to configure it with these settings and stuff like that. But yeah, that's how the internet works. It's BGP. It's like announcing like, I have these addresses reachable from here, and you redistribute those to everybody you're peered with and whatever else. And as a result, you end up in a situation where, the internet is this whole big topology map of ever-changing routes, and they can take sessions up and down without disrupting major flows of traffic or rerouting things,
Yeah. That sounds pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
So my second follow-up from back a while ago was like, because you had mentioned a while ago that you're like, okay, algorithm is not my thing. Don't care too much about the theory, which is fair. Practical. But isn't it the case that the very thing that you are building is really, it's such a fundamental problem in computer science, which is to find the fastest way to get somewhere in this like giant, massive mega route, and like presumably enumerating everything would be too slow, right?
Yeah, so like it's interesting because like intuitively the first thing that comes to mind is like Dijkstra's algorithm, right? Like shortest path first, and it's like that's how a lot of those things work at a fundamental level. It's just like Dijkstra's algorithm. But the thing is like you have to take different metrics into account as well. So for example, if I have a 1 gigabit link that gets me somewhere in 2 hops, but there's a 100 gigabit pipe that gets me there in 3, then chances are pretty good because the capacity is going to be a lot lower on the 100 gig pipe. That might be preferred instead. So
it's just like figuring out a good cost metric is like an important input.
And you have to be able to factor in lots of different things like the current capacity, the capacity of the link, if there are any major events going on, if there's maintenance on this provider's network, these are all things that like network operators deal with every day. And I don't do that for a living. I am a software engineer who does networking, right? Like I'm not a network engineer. So I like to clarify that because like people think that I've operated this big, and like I don't. I operate my home lab stuff. Like I run BGP from my server to my router. It's I've never operated like a true large network.
It's pretty cool. It's a whole lot of complexity there.
Yeah, there is for sure. But yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is that like most people don't really have to ever know or care, but I love this stuff. So
yeah. Fascinating. Wow. Yeah, I would like to. I mean, I feel like I learned some of this stuff in a class at one point, but like if you don't use it, like you're really just gonna forget all of it.
Exactly. And the whole thing is like, a lot of these concepts, like it's stuff that so many people can take advantage of. So for example, I think you and I have talked before about like, MBCC. Like I think like MBCC and like the whole topic of like how that works is like fascinating. Or like Cockroach is able to do MBCC over like multiple distributed machines all around the world. And like that is pure insanity. That's total distributed consensus, like wild stuff. And I will never understand fully how that works. But the fact that I can use it and take advantage of that functionality is great.
Yeah, I mean it's all one and the same, right? Like Cockroach uses like Raft and whatnot, but all of Raft is based on a network. Right? Like you have to rely on the fact that these routes exist. So nobody understands anything. It's kind of like the conclusion. People can understand like small slices of things and like
so
everything up and down.
Exactly. So something that's important for people who are watching right now is like, yeah, you need to realize that, you're not expected to know every single little thing. And, you can specialize and that's okay. And you can always, you can have friends, you can have people you talk to and like learn things from. Like, that's great. And I think it's a lot of fun to get to reach out to folks who don't do what you do every single day because you learn lots of new things.
Yeah. Yeah. So these are good things. These are good things. How big is your immediate team, by the way? Like the people, the folks who are working with you on this stuff, how big is that?
I think we are now 8 or 9, but specifically, I'm working on this with like approximately 1.5 other engineers, like one person half time and then one person full time. So there are 2.5 of us roughly on the project.
Dang, that's pretty small. So
Yep.
9 people.
Mm-hmm.
And is that I'm just like curious about like organizational structure because like I do management stuff now. Like is that like one manager owns or not owns, but like manages that team of 9 people?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of been the case in my career thus far. Is like generally you have a team of like maybe 6 to 8 engineers and a manager, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that much beyond that, like you kind of have to subdivide a little bit more because like it ends up being um, just difficult to keep up with everybody, or like you're working on completely different things. And even right now, like there are people on my team that like our work itself does not intersect much, but we're just working towards the same general goals.
Yeah, yeah. And do you guys plan your work all at once? Like, do you put 8, 9 people in a room and like kind of think about what you're doing for the next period of time?
Yeah. So coincidentally, somebody asked, "Do you use agile software, Jira, etc." Yeah, we use Jira. I think everybody in this industry uses Jira. Or like you end up at a point where like it's unavoidable. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be everywhere you go because no other tool gives like for example, business or project management folks the tools they really need. Um, and for better or worse, like I've come to realize that Jira with the Kanban board view, like where you just drag the tickets between columns, like that works just fine for me. And if it makes it happy for folks who need to care about the business metrics and stuff, then I'm happy to do it.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, we get together. We do the sprint planning sort of stuff for like the
Mm-hmm.
talk about your blockers and stuff like that. It's all pretty. I think a lot
Standard
of those
stuff.
things are pretty standard in this industry.
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm always just curious to hear people's details, though.
Right?
It's interesting. Yeah, Jira stuff like so. Cockroach has an interesting relationship with Jira because obviously we started as an open source project. We're still mostly sort of open source available if you really want to get like serious business about it. Yo, by the way, speaking of source available, I really got like dinged by Brad Fitzpatrick the other day on this GC assert stuff.
Yeah,
he was like
yeah,
no, we will not be using closed source software in our.
yeah.
So I was like, oh my god, I failed to put a license on this package that I put onto the internet.
It's all good.
I was like, god damn it, I need to go
No,
back and like change this.
well, it's all good. Like I was gonna be like, oh, okay, well, it's updated now, but he already just wrote a thing that does it, and it's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
I think that's just the kind of person he is, though. It's like he's like, oh, I'm just gonna. He's like, oh, I can just do this myself. And
yeah,
it,
yeah.
it, it took, and honestly, it wasn't like that much more work or anything.
Yeah, yeah. He wasn't writing like the general thing, and he didn't need the general thing. It made sense. I
Well,
was
that's what I
just
was
like,
worried about. Is like I was like, are
yeah,
you really gonna write your own version of that tool? But no, he just like did like a quick little hack thing, and like,
yeah,
it works
yeah,
perfectly. But
yeah,
that was
yeah.
that was pretty funny.
That was really funny. I was like, this is like my. I mean, you and Brad Fitzpatrick are like tight homies. It seems like you guys are like
I mean,
reviewing each other blogs and stuff.
yeah, I think we have like similar interests. Like we've talked over like the home lab B type stuff, where it's like
Yeah,
I do lots of weird networking stuff. He's doing weird networking
yeah,
stuff at Tailscale and whatever else.
exactly.
I think ultimately, yeah, there's definitely some interest overlap. So we've just interacted a few times over the years and stuff like that. But
Yeah,
in particular, the NetAdder stuff, like we've both lamented for a long time that the existing Go net IP type is not ideal in lots of ways. And now, for example, I've been using it for a while, but the Tailscale folks are making it really, really fast and crazy, and that's pretty cool.
Tailscale. Now that seems like a really cool company. Goodness gracious, like they've got like they're like the hype child of the internet. Like Tailscale and Oxide Computing. Those two companies
Oxide, and
are
what's the new
like
one? Yeah, Planet Scale too. Like all these companies that are kind of keep popping up on Twitter and stuff. Like we hired this person. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Planetscale. I mean, like so I mean I have a comment about PlanetScale, which is that CockroachDB is a better distributed database than Vitesse.
Oh, here we go.
so
Okay.
so
Yeah.
you should be using CockroachDB and not Vitesse. But I mean PlanetScale, yeah, like I mean I'm jealous. I would like to be working with Fatih Arslan or however you say his name.
But yep.
Yeah, that dude seems like pretty awesome. But yeah, they keep snapping up all those virtuosos, right? Like, what's the deal?
Mm-hmm. It seems like this just happens every once in a while, yeah, like you said with like Oxide, it's the same sort of thing. Like these things just kind of happen, and whether or not the companies go anywhere, who knows? But
We really
I
need
think
to bring back Value Do you remember Value
no.
Valleywag was like the Gawker equivalent for like the tech industry. So they had this
Really?
like gossip magazine on the internet for like random Silicon Valley stuff. And I feel like this is definitely like kind of coming into the world of Valleywag right here. We're like gossiping about random companies. So Vitesse and PlanetScale are the same thing, Nikon, in case you were curious about that. PlanetScale is built on top of Vitesse.
Oh, okay. And
Um,
is Vitesse a MySQL
yes.
compatible database, or is it like a MySQL proxy? I thought it was like a proxy at least at one point.
It's like a MySQL fork or plugin set or like
Okay, okay.
extension, something like that. I don't exactly know how it works, but I mean the thing with Vitesse is basically like you have to shard it yourself. It's sort of like the like medium school
Yeah.
of distributed databases where you've got to do the sharding. It sort of handles some of it for you, but you have to choose your sharding points and like keep expanding them out. It doesn't do it automatically, which is what like the new ones do: CockroachDB, TidyB, Yugabyte, blah blah blah. Spanner, they all do that stuff automatically. Anyway, enough. Yeah, blah. Does Oxide have a product yet? Dominic says. I have no idea.
I
Do you
have no
know?
idea either. I know that they're. I think I've seen like they have like prototypes of stuff, but I have no idea. But I think that's a company I'm very curious about because they're producing like a physical thing. That's very cool. Or like people have mentioned like if there's an Oxide Home Lab edition, like yeah, I'll buy that.
Yeah,
I'll 100% buy that. Like yeah, sign me up right now. You can take my money. Um, but I have no idea. I think that's another company that'd be like super interesting to follow. And I'm closely following their Twitter and everything. But
yeah. They're definitely like a hype child of the internet right now for whatever reason. Probably like I mean they just have like some senior uh
yep.
and well followed folks who work there. Is probably what it is,
It's
honestly.
kind of funny. It's kind of funny in tech because it's like I feel like to some extent like the hero worship thing is like a real thing in tech,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact of the matter is like we're all just everybody, they're just people and they just want to like build things that excite them, whatever else, and it's like you need to treat people like people. Like I've seen like some awkward encounters like conferences where people get like swarmed and like
Oh
really
yeah,
it's just that's
it's
kind of
kind of
weird.
cringe.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's like minor celebrities, but like they're not really prepared to be celebrities. Yeah, like yeah, I think I was at Strange Loop. I think there's a couple of encounters like this. Like people like surrounded Rich Hickey, like started asking him a lot of
sure.
questions about stuff, but like there's a lot of like silence too. They're like, I think I was in fact one of the silent people because you're a little bit intimidated, to be honest. Like you're meeting Rich Hickey, who you've watched like hours and hours of his talks or whatever, and
Right.
then you're like, what do I ask? Like I'm too scared.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because my first GopherCon actually, I ended up in an elevator with Rob Pike, and I like was starstruck, and I was like, oh my god, it's so nice to meet you. I love Go, and like, I
And he
don't
was
know
like, he
if
was like, ugh, just another fanboy.
yeah,
Get me
oh
out of here. Security.
I mean it was some kind of interaction. Like he's like, and I was like, I just wanted to shake his hand. He's like, oh, I don't shake hands. And like that was it. Like that was like kind of the end of the conversation. And I don't know if I caught him on a bad day or what, but like it's okay. It's all good. It's
Wow.
just that was a weird experience.
Yeah, yeah, that's tough. That's tough.
But of course, like I talked to plenty of folks in the Go community who are very friendly and stuff like that too. And like
Yeah.
actually, I've had a ton of fun the past couple of Gopher cons, talking to like the runtime and compiler people, like just learning, just like trying to sit there and just absorb knowledge and understand. Like I find those topics fascinating.
Yeah.
You know?
I need to. Those are important topics for me. Those are important topics for me. I want to. Those are some things. You know, CPU management. How much
Yeah.
CPU did my Go routine use? Do you know how to answer that question?
Look at the node exporter stuff that's pulling it from the runtime, and then yeah, I mean, but otherwise, yeah, I mean, it's yeah. There's a lot of hand waving, there's a lot of like hand waving with that sort of stuff, unless you're looking at like pprof profiles or like the Go tool trace stuff.
Yeah.
But
The Go tool trace stuff is really what you want, but the thing is, it's just too expensive to have out on a runtime. So
very expensive. Yeah.
anyway, yeah, companies, man, there's some good ones out there. Oxide Computing. Are you into retro computing? That was another question that kind of popped into my mind. There's a bunch of people I follow on Twitter who they love getting like random old hardware, like turning it on and figuring out how it works. Like it's got Mac OS 7 on it or something like that. Is that ever something that you
Really,
explored?
I actually there was one point where we had like an Apple II and everything, but that was a while ago. But no, I don't have any retro computing stuff at the moment.
Yeah.
I think it'd be kind of cool, but the thing is that like I live in an apartment right now. I mean, I'm looking at buying a house in the next like couple of months, which would be great. But I I would have a hard time, I guess, justifying like having something around just for the novelty of it. Like I'm at the point where I'm trying to have just like more practical things, and like only accumulate stuff that is useful to me if I
Yeah.
can. But that being said, so the problem is I say this, but then I have like my beer collection or my whiskey collection or whatever else, and it's like I mean, I guess those are useful to me for some definition of useful, useful, positive, whatever in my life. But you know, I try and do my best to like, I try and do my best to at this point, like, either sell or donate or whatever stuff that like I no longer really need, like tech stuff especially. So I don't keep like my old desktops or my old servers. Like I end up like selling them to friends for cheap or something, or selling the drives or whatever else. But
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that for me, trying to get into that stuff, even though it's cool, it would just like, I don't think I have the time to really do it justice. Like I think the
yeah,
people who do it do awesome experiments, but I'm like, what? I don't know. I just don't have the weekend time or something like that.
yeah, I think it would be super cool. I do want to get into like hobby electronics. I think that'd be really fun. Like the stuff that like Stoppelberg has done, like with his keyboard controller, like that's fascinating to me. Or like playing with Raspberry Pis and GPIO and all that stuff. Like these are things I want to play with.
Exactly.
I have not thus far.
Yeah.
But those are all things that would be like I could add sensors to stuff around my house.
Right.
Like I'm gonna have so many home lab projects when I get a place, like sensors on everything and cameras and all this stuff. Like it's gonna be fun.
8-bit guy on YouTube. I haven't heard of that person. The people who I like to follow for retro computing stuff are this guy Slava Pestov. He does a lot of really cool stuff with old Macs, and Foon on Twitter.
Yeah,
they do a lot of cool stuff as well. And I feel like if you just like have enough people like that sort of on your feed or whatever, like you might be just satisfied by like watching their exploits without having to do them yourself.
that's a very funny thing, and it's like I feel the exact same way about like Twitch, for example, right? Like you end up in a situation where it is like you can experience this thing without actually putting in the effort. Like there are games where it's like I want to see how that game goes, but it's like I don't really care to play it myself,
Yeah.
And Twitch has been really, really good for that. Like
Mm-hmm.
vicariously experiencing something through someone else is amazing,
For sure. Do I think a JIT would help with cockroach? I think maybe like the query compiler stuff. Well, it's like it would just be a different approach. It would probably help some things and hurt some other things. Maybe I don't really know. Foon is great.
I know people have done like JITs in Go, like actually like
Oh really?
marking pages of memory executable and like writing.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
I didn't know that you could
like,
actually do that in Go. I thought like the
super
memory
unsafe
protection would like.
Yeah, no, super unsafe YOLO, like syscall unsafe
Oh, wow.
YOLO. Yeah, it's fascinating actually. I was talking to Caleb Spare about that a while ago, and I think Caleb might have published something, but a couple people have done it. But yeah, like writing out like compiled like x86 assembly into like a byte slice and then like executing it, like it's insanity.
That is insane. I mean, like, it's definitely something that like I wish that we could do more of in Go, like having, dynamic loading and stuff like that at runtime, plugins and everything. I know they have this plugins thing, but somebody was telling me that it was sort of sketchy. I think Dominic maybe last time.
Yeah, I think that the plugin thing, like it was, initially created for like, Linux and all that stuff. And I feel like it never really, I'm not sure how well it matured for other platforms. So my understanding is that like Go plugins in general are something that you should probably try to avoid. But that being said, I've never used it myself. So
yeah, no, I haven't either. I think there's like vague interest in the database space of having the ability to, write your own. It's essentially like edge computing stuff, right? It's like the database is sort of a kind of way to do edge computing, and being able to load crypto primitives or like random crap that you want to write yourself and have the database execute that near where the data is. That's attractive to some people, but you can't exactly do that without loading something.
Right.
So, but I just don't see a way to do it unless you do like something completely insane, like execute random untrusted x86. But probably nobody's going to do that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like, I mean, it's a cool trick, but it doesn't seem very practical.
Yeah.
I think Caleb mentioned he was using it in production at least at one point, and I have no idea how or why. I don't remember the context, but that was a fascinating conversation. Like, I was just like, jaw dropped the entire time. Like, it was awesome.
Yeah. Well, we're kind of coming to the end of our time here, so I'm wondering if we should start wrapping up.
Yes. If there are any like last minute questions or stuff, I'd be happy to do that. But otherwise, yeah, I got maybe 5 more minutes. But yeah, this has been a lot of fun though. We'll definitely have to do this again.
Wait, I think we should like bring in a bunch of people. I think we should. Yes. What would be really fun is if we did one of those, like we were discussing it earlier, these like virtual office or like things where you have spatialness and have a bunch of people stream that and like go around talking to each other. I think that would be pretty fun.
That could be pretty cool. Yeah, because then you're just talking about like whatever, and it's like, oh, they're talking about programming language theory. Let me walk away.
Yeah, exactly. Or it would be really awkward. I'm not actually really sure. It could go either way.
Yeah, totally. That's an interesting idea. Yeah. we need to get more people like who do go streaming and stuff like on Twitch and everything. Like we've got Matthew Dembski, we've got Barrick, we've got
Yeah.
they're I'm sure we can keep convincing more and more folks to do it. So that'd be pretty cool.
The beginnings of a podcast. Yeah, maybe a podcast would work. I don't know.
We need to get Dominic streaming eventually.
Yes, Dominic will.
I know he won't, but he's always on the computer. You might as well be streaming his work. Right? So.
Spatialness. Every day we stray further from the dictionary. Hey, I mean, yeah. Well, you got the gist of what I was talking about, didn't you?
I thought for a second I was like, wait, spatialness is. I mean, I don't know. I make up words all the time. The problem is for me is that like I start saying silly things like ironically, and then it becomes part of my vocabulary. So I still say YOLO and stuff like all the time, or it's lit fam. Like these are dumb things that like I just keep saying. I can't help myself. But oh, by the way, Dominic says I have no mouth. I can't stream.
No mouth. Okay.
Right,
yeah, he's like
enough.
the guy from the Matrix, or like Neo from the Matrix after you get that like weird spell cast on him.
Yep, fair enough. Well, cool. This has been dope. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And
yeah,
we'll definitely do this again. But this has been a lot of fun.
Thanks for setting it up. All the best. Let's hang up the Zoom now.
Yeah. So I guess I'll switch my scene over here really quick. But yeah, I'll see y'all later.
Okay. See ya, Matt. Thanks for coming on.
Yep, later.
You got the awkward. Oh my God. I'm left alone. It's so weird. You have
Everybody knows that relational databases don't.
What the
scale.
heck?
The databank's
Oh my
too
God.
big.
All my
I have to
alerts
narrow
are
down
like
the
delayed.
search. How are you gonna do that?
They're
By
all
guessing.
happening right now. But you guys,
database
I think I'm
is
just
too big.
about to
I have to narrow
I'm just
down the
about to
search.
sign off
How are
myself
you
here.
gonna
Let me
do
turn that off for a
By
second.
guessing.
Okay. You guys, it's been really fun. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thanks again to Matt. Thanks again to Matt, who had this idea, by the way. I'm not sure if you knew it, but this was all Matt's idea for coming onto the stream, doing the restreaming thing. So, make sure to give him a follow if you haven't already done it. Yeah, love to have discussions like this with horrible public speaking. I think it'd be fine. I think it's just a conversation. I've never done something like this before either, and I don't know, whatever. We just sort of chatted, right? But you guys, so here's something, just quick stream announcement thing. Next week, I'm going to be on vacation, which means that there's going to be no Friday stream, which is very unfortunate. But I will be back next Sunday. So not this Sunday, but the following Sunday, I will be back. A little bit of an unusual schedule, but, I'll be skiing. So I think it's fine. So I'll see you guys next Sunday. Thanks again for hanging out. I think this was just a lot of fun. Let's find somebody to raid. Let's go ahead and do that before I completely run out of steam here. Why don't we find somebody to quickly raid? Okay. Whoop. Wow. What an interesting thing to do, right? What an interesting thing to do. So let's go ahead and take a look at the science and technology section and see who you got. Well, Gene is streaming. So you guys know Gene? Gene's doing this PL talk stuff. It's another talk thing. I think I'm gonna find somebody who's doing programming just because I feel like it. How about that? Good rate him, see him griffing. He's a homie. We rate him a lot. Who should we raid? I think that let's raid this Rust person. Okay, let's do that. This guy, see him, he's got a face cam, he's doing Rust stuff. This is gonna be fun. Okay, you guys, make sure to say hello. I am Hardliner. Make sure to say hello. Drop the large data bank emotes if you got them. Drop the raid emotes if you don't. And thanks again for hanging out. I'll see you guys next time, all right? All right, goodbye.